every single time I get on here, I have to rearrange everything. It just takes so much time.
I mean, I just pressed the start streaming button.
Let me check on my phone if I can see if you're live or not.
Yeah, that'll be helpful, because god damn it. No, I hate this shit. I am, but I'm mad because the YouTube studio is fucking... I did not think I would have to go through, because I scheduled the stream, I did not think I would have to go through and edit this shit manually, but apparently I do. So, second, literally, to change the title so that it's accurate.
No, do your thing. It's all good.
Sorry, it feels like every time I stream on YouTube, shit is different from the last time I streamed on YouTube as far as desktop streams go. And so it just gets, like, exhausting a little bit, you know?
Well, are you able to stream from your phone if you... Because, I mean, I can be on my desktop, and I think you can be on your phone if we're doing it through Discord, right?
Well, the problem is I don't think YouTube will pick up app audio, and I feel like if it was just picking up... Yeah, YouTube mobile won't pick up app audio unless I did like a screen share thing, and then, I don't know, maybe there would have been a way, but I feel like it's like sunk cost fallacy. I'm already this close to being, to fixing it, so I'm like, fuck it.
It's good to figure out anyways. It's going to be useful going forward for you.
Precisely. Now you're starting to see the point, right? Mm-hmm. So, let's see. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to actually open YouTube in another tab. I've got like
I encourage you.
Right now.
You're an ally in this. Do what you need to
do. Well, I appreciate it for sure. I appreciate your patience with me. So now I'm just gonna change the title, and then I won't feel like such a fucking retard for having the complete wrong title. But I think I'm actually gonna leave the thumbnail the same, because you know what? It's topical enough.
I can't even see. I don't see the thumbnail. It's just your profile picture, it looks like. And it says debating someone from the DFF hater subs.
No, that's my scheduled stream.
Oh, okay, hold on. Am I looking at the wrong thing, maybe?
You might be looking at the wrong thing, but the weird fucking, the weirdness of YouTube systems makes me unsure.
You've got your... So you're streaming on the 2024 election night coverage.
Exactly. Yes, that's the problem. Okay. Now you see why I feel like a fucking dumbass.
I see.
Okay. Alright. Now I've switched things over and things will make sense. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, alrighty. Now I can close that tab, and I can pop out chat, and I can copy that, pop that into OBS, and then we will be... Oh my god. The endless fucking... Oh my god, the endless... I can't remember what this effect is called, but where something is like infinitely repeated. Okay. So, let me just
regression.
For this. Yeah, infinite regression, thank you.
You've got the window and window going on.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So, in theory, I've got chat up now, and alright, so...
Ask them if they can hear okay.
Yeah, can you guys hear okay? Can y'all can y'all understand what we're saying more or less? There's a couple of people in here right now, so.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if they're, let's see. Actually, if I...
let's see here. Fuck. No. See, the chat is just not very readable on my end, on the place where I have it, and that makes it kind of,
Okay, let me see So I'm watching the stream here, and I can't hear me, but I can hear. I think I can hear you talk. Say something.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hold on. I can hear you in the call, but I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, I figured I'd give you multiple inputs.
No, we should be good. Okay, we should be good. I think I can hear us both on your stream. I think we're set.
Okay, and your levels sound okay? The music is a little loud? Okay, yeah, you're right. It's super loud. Sorry. I do have like a little background song.
Cool.
Okay, there we go. Now that's much lower.
And if you need to, I can turn myself up, but it might be better if you do it on OBS, I think. If you're using that.
You said turn myself up on OBS a little bit?
No. If they have trouble hearing me, I could turn myself up, but it might be better if you do it, if it's coming through on your end.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I'm low for them or not.
I misunderstood. Right on.
It sounds good on my recording. I'm looking at the audio levels on mine, so we're good to go on my end.
Okay. Well, I am, I think I'm just gonna, stop fucking with all the different little elements, and we're just gonna go ahead, because, what are we gonna do? We can't fix everything, right? Okay. So,
yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just true, you can't fix everything, and the great philosopher Jagger once said, you can't always get what you want, but sometimes if you try, you might get what you need. All right, with that in mind, where do you want to start?
I just want to say thanks for inviting me, I guess, onto your stream. I made a, I was pretty mean towards you, I think, in the video I made, maybe deservedly so. But you reached out and you asked to have this dialogue, so I'm happy to talk to you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I actually love having conversations with people who wildly disagree with me. I think they're some of the most interesting conversations a person can have. The unfortunate reality of people who agree super strongly is that a lot of times you end up with basically an echo chamber, and you're just kind of like preaching to the choir to each other all day long. So when you actually find somebody that disagrees with you rather in a substantive way, it can be really fun to have a conversation with that person, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get into electoralism at some point and kind of debate, because, I think we have a lot of the same criticisms of the DNC, but we have different strategies about how to change the DNC or how to accommodate for those flaws, sort of. I don't want to put words in your mouth, though, and I know that you're not Paul, right? So I'm not going to ascribe his positions as I understand them to you. But yeah, if you want to get into that, we can. Or if you had another topic you wanted to discuss, I'm sure you have other criticisms of me as well.
Give me just 1 second, because I'm ADHD as fuck, and I just realized that if I just put my TV that's connected to the computer on to a fucking input, then I can just read the chat on my other TV. Sorry. Okay, so recap the last point you just made, if you don't mind.
No, I was just saying I wanted to have the conversation about electoralism and how to actually affect change in the Democratic Party.
Okay, yeah. So,
yeah.
And you said something about, I'm not Paul, you don't want to ascribe my positions to him. And I really do. I appreciate... Go on.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I think we're going to do a lot of talking over each other as we kind of figure out the flow of the conversation, but...
For sure.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry for stepping on you.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, I appreciate that, because a lot of people that I argue with online, especially people that know that I'm a member of Paul's community and that I'm a mod over there and shit, a lot of people ascribe all of Paul's positions to me and assume that I just walk in lockstep with him. And I'll openly admit that there's a lot of positions where I don't substantively disagree with Paul at all. I think we probably feel the exact same way about healthcare, for example. We probably feel the exact same way about ending our reliance on fossil fuels. We probably feel similarly about food sovereignty, although I don't know if Paul's ever quite talked about it in those terms. Like, there's a lot of things I would say we're in lockstep on, then there's other things I feel like we wildly disagree on, right?
So when you say you're in lockstep, does that mean that you agree with Paul on the ideal or like the goal that you would like for those specific issues? Or do you agree with Paul on the ways to achieve those goals also?
It depends, for sure. I think it depends because there's some things where, well, and I guess this is what I mean when I say me and Paul aren't in lockstep, right? We aren't one to one matched in positions because there are some things that I think Paul's intentions are right, but I don't really know that his policy prescriptions are the right way to go about it. And there are some things where I think his intentions are right and his policy prescriptions are good, right? So maybe that's a closer explanation of what I mean.
Yeah. Well, let me just ask you then. So, did you vote for? I'm assuming that you're obviously on the left,
Mm-hmm.
but the impression I get is that you don't support the DNC, that you don't really believe in electoralism, is what I've heard. But I don't want to, I don't want to assume that's your position. So, if you don't mind just explaining
Sorry,
for me
excuse me.
your position on, no, you're fine, on electing Democrats, or if you feel like it even makes sense to participate in the election process.
Yeah, no, I'm that this is one of those places where me and Paul differ, right? I am not 100% on board with the idea that electoralism at this point is completely useless. I actually think that electoralism could do a lot of good if people were intelligent about the way they voted. Overall, right? I think a lot of people vote out of fear on both the right and the left. I think that rational long-term decision making doesn't play a whole lot into a lot of people's thinking process when they go to the ballot. And I think that electoralism could do a shit ton of good if we were, like I said, effective about what we were doing and if we were thinking about it intelligently, so to speak. And I know that makes me sound super pompous, like I just know what's best for the fucking country, but that's not how I mean it, right? Like I said, because of the media environment in this country and the way politicians manipulate that and the public consciousness as a whole through other means, people just aren't really uh, usually engaging with election. I don't think they're usually
So
engaging with elections very rationally.
let me ask you about that then. So you talk about engaging rationally and voting out of fear. Do you mean like lesser evil voting, like we're afraid of what Trump will do, so we vote for the Democrats out of fear of stopping Trump, and you feel like that stymies real progress, or am I misunderstanding that?
No, I think that's pretty close to. I think that's pretty close to true. Yeah, I think that allowing ourselves to be. I think allowing ourselves to be led to believe that a Trump presidency means the end of America or the end of democracy or anything to that level, and being made to vote for the DNC out of that fear, basically, I think that that's probably a pretty negative thing on the whole. I think that that has led to the DNC feeling like they can literally put up whoever. It doesn't matter. They put up Hillary
Mm-hmm.
Clinton in 2016, right? Nobody fucking liked her. She actually
Right.
received 2 points. Actually, I have the numbers up. She received 2.1% more votes than Trump did, but she didn't receive nearly as many electoral votes, right? She got
Were you
227. Do
were
what?
you following politics back then during
Oh,
the
yeah.
2016 race?
Yeah.
So I mean, I was a huge Bernie bro during that, and I actually
Me too.
didn't vote for Hillary in the
I didn't either.
election.
I didn't either.
But looking back, do you acknowledge, like, I can acknowledge that the country would be in a better place if Hillary had been elected president. Just if we look at the Supreme Court, right? For example, I think that's the big one that everyone always points to. You can see that the way that Trump was able to get so many appointees on the Supreme Court, and look at all the terrible decisions that have resulted from having that Republican majority on the bench. Roe v. Wade is an obvious example, but for me, the most troubling one is the idea that Trump has such broad immunity and latitude when acting as president to just violate the law completely. And we're seeing that play out now as the courts try to try to stop Elon and Trump and put restraining orders on Elon from these agencies, and they're just completely disregarded. We can see that this is sort of this isn't happening in a vacuum, right? Like this is something that for 10 years they've been staging and they've been planning and they've been getting judges in the places they need them in. So just on that alone, we can say that, at least I would say that Hillary would have been much better for the country, and that's just one metric, not even looking at like the tax cuts that Trump ran through, or that kind of if you get more into like policy individually, there are several things I'm sure that we could find like little ways that Hillary would be better. What do you think of that? Do you agree that Hillary would have been a better president in 2016, or do you think it doesn't even matter to have that discussion?
I kind of lean towards I don't know if it matters, simply because I think you can kind of talk all day long about what might have happened if this had happened in the past, and I think a lot of it ends up just kind of sounding like cope to me. Not, I mean, no offense by that. It just ends up sounding like, well, what if we had done this, and what if she had done that? And I think a lot of it just seems like it's a little, presumptive.
Well, I mean, so I'm not like trying to say like, well, hypothetically alternate universe, but I'm saying it's relevant because it's sort of the same conversation we've been having for 10 years, right? All throughout the era of Trump, we've been within the left, at least, I'm not sure if you've seen the videos that we've been making, but I've been talking a lot about how the right is so unified behind Trump and this idea of a unitary executive and nationalism, and just complete lockstep behind the oligarchy and their agenda. And the left is always, 100 different factions moving in different directions. And I think that's because there's kind of a collectivism that goes hand in hand with conservative ideology that just isn't inherent in liberalism. But, I think that this conversation with Hillary, I'm not trying to relitigate what could have happened or what should have happened, but I'm saying this is an important moment of history that there's a lesson we can learn here. And that there is importance in lesser evil voting. And like you said earlier, the Democrats, then they can do whatever they want and there's no consequences. And that's true in the general election right now. But that's not true in the primaries, right? There are other ways to hold Democrats accountable than just on, that November day every 4 years. So much of progress happens outside of that specific election.
I tend to agree, but unfortunately the Democratic Party didn't give us the option to engage in a primary in 2024, and didn't meaningfully give us a primary in 2016 when you consider the fact that Bernie Sanders was scuttled by super delegates.
Mm-hmm.
I always fuck that word up for some reason.
Super delegate?
Yeah, it's not a hard word at all, but I fuck it up.
Yeah, it's just two words put together.
Yeah.
And you're right. They totally did. In 2016, there was the super delegates. And in 2020, you remember the Super Tuesday betrayal of where everyone dropped out and coalesced behind Biden except for Elizabeth Warren, right?
Right.
So
I didn't even want to bring that one up because that was
to...
a Democratic victory, but yes, I remember it well.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, we're talking about examples of them rigging the primary against the more progressive liberal wing of the party, right?
Right.
And so I mean, I want to acknowledge that they do that, and we do see examples of that. But I think that's a battle that we can fight and that we can win, and we can see how, twice Bernie almost broke through the primaries. There wasn't a strong challenger in 2024, and my biggest criticisms of Biden, other than the genocide, really are the fascist way, the anti-democratic ways that we handled the primaries, that his administration tried to hide his deteriorating mental status and really gifted us Trump again, or rather gifted the country to Trump again.
Yeah, see this, I think
so I have all those same criticisms as you do, right? But I don't think that means we still could make changes within the Democratic primary, and there still have been examples of us doing that, of us moving the party more towards us through electoralism.
I just don't.
And not just in the presidential, not just in the presidential race either, but if you can look at the way that we make gains in Congress, right? Like even Justice Democrats with those 10 Congress people that we got in there, you can see how we're able to push some of our agendas in the Biden administration. There's a confluence of having, the corporate Democrats, they allow still a way to work within them to shift them towards what we want. when we're willing to work within their apparatus. But when we abandon them and when we show them that we're not a reliable voting bloc, they're going to just go more towards the center and become more and more Republican light. Withholding our vote has the opposite effect than bringing them to us.
I mean, at this point, they're not even... I mean, like, you recognize at this point they're not going towards the center. They're going, like, actively towards the right at this point.
I mean, if we look at it on a global spectrum, America is pretty authoritarian, right? I don't know if you've... Yeah, I'm sure you've, like, seen the political compass test, right?
Well, yeah.
It kind of shows, and, you know, everyone who takes that is always kind of skewed left. But it's sort of because it seems biased, but it's on a global level. So it's sort of... it shows how biased to the right America is typically. So yeah, the Democrats are, I would say, a center-right party, but the Republicans are an authoritarian right party in a much more extreme extent. And maybe we can debate that if you want to. But I feel that the differences between the parties are still, you know, incredibly important.
I don't think we necessarily need to debate that. I would just say that... I would just clarify that you're basically saying that the Democratic Party, when you say that they're going to the center, you mean America's center, not the global center, because, you know...
Correct, yeah.
You know, the center, according to European standards, I mean, the Democrats have been to the right of that for a minute.
Exactly, yeah, right, I can see that. I'm saying from our perspective, right? I think you and I are probably standing somewhere in the libertarian left, like the lower left quadrant, right? Or at least on the left somewhere. And the Democrats are on the right.
Right.
I haven't heard much of what you've said. I've heard a little bit of it, but
okay.
You know.
Well, I normally
not too much.
I normally describe my politics as I'm a democratic socialist in the short term, like the immediate kind of right now we need this sense, and an anarchist in the future sense. I think human beings are capable of living together in, you know, collective communities that are self-governing and independent and all that, and I just don't know that we're necessarily there yet, because I think that, at least here in America, I can't really speak for any other country, I think you're 100% right. We're a super far-right authoritarian country that trends super conservative, and that sort of social conditioning is going to be really hard to recondition people from, so to speak. I don't know if that's the right way to put it.
Here's
but
another...
You know what I mean.
Here's another aspect too. Like, we can look at America and how we are on a global stage, right? Like, America's foreign policy is very, you know, authoritarian and economically exploitative, and but the way that America governs its citizens too, we can see varying degrees of authoritarianism versus libertarianism in the way that it treats its citizens, right? Like, we can look at certain rights that Americans have in the Bill of Rights, for example, that don't exist in other countries. You know, you can look at, for me, as a gay man here in America, I have rights that I wouldn't have if I were living in, like, Russia, right? Or China, or even Japan, really, which is another pretty progressive on a global stage country. But there's still, you know, America in its constitution does have that appeal, that declaration of the liberal rights of individual people are important. And I think that kind of gives us a lot of latitude to work within our system to move it over more and more to our side, which I think ultimately the goal of leftism is to maximize individual rights. Or do you not agree with that?
I think the goals of leftism are many and varied, but I guess you could reduce it down to that. I guess I would say it's like the protection of individual rights, but I don't know. If you consider some philosophies we consider super leftist, they're not really they're not really focused so hard on the individual rights.
We can talk about like authoritarian leftism, like more like strict authoritarian. I don't even want to say communism because I feel like that's unfair to strict Marxists, but like that kind of Soviet style communism, right? Or that Maoist style of leftism. I'm assuming you're not that sort of on the left, right? wherein the more
No,
freedom left,
no.
the more
Yeah,
we want people to be free. Yeah.
yeah, no, not a tanky. No.
Right. So let me ask you though, like what would be your political goals, and what really are those, right? If we say that our political goals are to have a strong labor force and strong worker rights in this country, for example, it's like the reason those rights are important, the reason your economic rights are meaningful is because you can't enjoy your liberal rights. You can't be a free, happy person who has freedom of choice if you are economically enslaved, right? If you live under impoverished conditions, it restricts your other freedoms. These things that we want to provide for people, healthcare, for example, we want everyone to have healthcare, not for the for the general good of keeping people alive, but who cares if everyone's alive if their quality of life is terrible? The point is, we want people to be healthy because you can't enjoy your life. You can't be a free person if you're unhealthy, to the point where you're debilitated, or if you even have crippling medical debt, right? So, I
Right.
mean, the goals of leftism really are the goals of liberalism. And I think that liberals have a bad rap because a lot of people identify like the corporate mainstream Democratic wing with liberalism, which to me seems silly as a liberal because they seem, terribly illiberal in a lot of ways. But I think that in leftist circles, there's a lot of eye rolling or scoffing when someone says the liberal word. But I really want there to be solidarity on the left with us all recognizing that the whole point is liberal values and that we need to take that moniker back because that label is what unites all these different factions. It's what unites even the anarcho-syndicalists, even liberals like me, even like the more corporate liberals. I'm sure even the Pauls of the world can appreciate that and recognize that. um I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or if you.
I feel like you went a lot of places there, and so I'm not really sure where to start with a response. I feel like you began it with asking me a question, but I don't remember what the question was now.
And then I just answered the question myself. uh I wanted to. Yeah, let me try to take it back then. uh so I guess we were talking about the goals of. Let's go back to electoralism. What do you So do you vote in the election still, or do you just consider that a waste of time and you don't participate?
I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to talk about earlier, and then we went other places, which is
Yeah,
fine. That's the nature of
I'll
these
do
like
that.
internet
just
arguments.
just
Yeah,
yeah, just pull me
we're
back in if I.
we're we're
Yeah.
both very ADHD people. I can already tell. It's fine. It's
Mm.
it's chill. You know, I don't know. Like people say that I'm ableist for using that as a way to describe people whose minds just go all over the place, but I'm sorry. I'm a zoomer. It's just what we do, you know. Actually, most of us don't do that
I
shit.
wouldn't
I ain't
worry
got no
about that.
excuse. Um, point is, I was talking earlier about how I think electoralism can do a profound amount of good. Honestly, even in the framework we've got right now, I think on a state level, you can probably trust your state senators if you can trust them, right? If they're a horrible, corrupt piece of shit, then they're a horrible, corrupt piece of shit. But if they
Well,
seem like a good person on the state level, there's ways to verify that. You know, there's ways to engage with that person, you know? And I think you can do a profound amount of good electorally on the state level to this day, right now. I mean, I actually participated in the legalization of recreational cannabis in Missouri that happened in, I believe it was the 2022 election year for
mhm,
Missouri, the midterm
yeah.
elections. Um, I uh, I was a petition person. I don't remember the name, like the actual title that I held. Not held, you know what I'm saying though. I can't remember the
Yeah,
name of
so
the
did
position,
you
but
did
and
you
I
well, describe like what you did, like what activism you did for that.
so I distributed petitions. That's the word I was looking for. I distributed petitions to, um, like stood out front of businesses, stood out front of like libraries, public places, that kind of thing, in order
Right
to
on.
get signatures to get it put on the ballot. Obviously, I was advocating for it among my friends and online and shit, but I don't know how much that shit counts. There weren't any protests that I remember that were going on in regards to it, or I would have attended those. But as far as I know or was made aware, that wasn't really the grounds on which it was happening in Missouri. And when the election came around, I voted in that their election.
And it passed, right?
Yeah, yeah. Missouri has recreational weed,
Right.
and it's one of the most sweeping. It's number one. It's a constitutional amendment there, so it'll be incredibly hard to challenge. Number two, it's one of the most sweeping and all-encompassing weed legislations there is. And number three, it overprotects the consumer. It overprotects the consumer. You can have weed in whatever container you want in Missouri. You can transport it however you want. You can't be high driving, but your passengers can smoke. It's some fucking mega progressive shit.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, it always warms my heart hearing stories like that, you know, about how
Me too.
you were actually able to affect change like that. That is a great thing. And I do think I owe you a bit of an apology because in the video I did insinuate that you were a LARPer. You know, you didn't really take your activism to heart, I think. Not you personally, but I kind of made that assumption based on the post that you had made. You know, so I rescind that accusation. It seems like you are the real deal when it comes to you know, putting the effort in and doing the work to get the change you want.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So do you think, so you didn't vote for Kamala, right?
No, I actually was ineligible to vote in the state that I'm a resident in. I live in Mississippi now, and I'm still registered to vote in Missouri. I haven't bothered updating my registration yet because I didn't realize. So I knew that I needed to update my registration, but I'm really bad about procrastinating when it comes to this kind of thing. So I haven't, you know, I still have my old Missouri ID, for example. And
let's say that you were eligible to vote. Would you have voted for Kamala?
No, I wouldn't have voted for Kamala. I probably would have voted for Jill Stein, honestly.
I voted for her back in 2016, I think.
I voted for Gary that year.
Oh, you were a libertarian.
No, not at all. I like, you know what sold me on Gary Johnson? Why have the left wing or the right wing when you can have why have the left nut or the right nut when you can have the Johnson?
Wow. So that little slogan worked for you, I guess.
Yeah, no, seriously, what it was his cannabis advocacy. He pretty much he was like a single issue libertarian dude. He was pretty retarded on foreign policy, pretty dumb on economic policy, but he didn't really pretend.
Was he the guy who didn't know what Aleppo was, or was that?
Yes,
I'm getting my libertarian candidates crossed in my head.
Yeah, that's the dude who had no idea what Aleppo was. That's my guy.
So I want to talk though about, you said you would support Jill Stein. So if you could vote and there was a Green Party candidate who, you know, met whatever criteria, whatever requirements you have, you would support them over the Democrat?
At this point, yeah, I think I would have to. I guess, well, hold on. Let me qualify that. It would depend on the candidate the DNC is putting up and the level of transparency in the primary process and whether they engage in one at all. There is actually, despite what the people on the hater subs will tell you, there is actually a path in my mind to getting me. No, there is actually a path. I understand why you're concerned, baby, but yeah, no, you're fine. You're good. Don't worry. He's good, and you're good. But, sorry, I'm talking to my partner. But anyway.
Yeah, you're fine.
There is actually a path in my mind where you could get me to vote for a Democrat. That path is the Democrats hold an open and transparent primary, and they allow a socialist to rise to the fucking top of that heap, like has tried to happen for the last 3 cycles, you know? They do that.
Let me
I'll go vote for that socialist candidate.
I got to follow up though on that. You said that, so open primary, I'm totally for that.
Open and transparent.
But if it's an open primary, open and transparent, very well. But how would they allow then, like they wouldn't allow a candidate, it's whatever candidate wins that open primary, right? So if the socialist were the candidate that rose to the top. Right, but I'm saying that but those two things aren't the same, right? Like it's possible to have an open and transparent primary process and someone you didn't want to win still wins, right? And even
Right.
if that person, so like let's say there was an open primary and it wasn't someone who was a socialist or who met that criteria, but what about someone like Bernie or Walls? You know, if would you at that point say, well, I have differences with this person. I don't believe in, democratic capitalism or whatever the same way they do, but I can see that they're, a more authentic, more trustworthy person than the usual typical politician, and that if they were president, that would move the paradigm a lot closer to where I want it, even if it's still far away from what I want. At that point, would you kind of would you be doing the utilitarian calculus, quote unquote, in your head of you know that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out is
That Vosh
I feel like
episode
when I
got to
talk
you a
to
lot, didn't it? I'm just
it's just
kidding.
a meme. I've seen
I know.
Paul say it so
I
many
know.
times, like watching his clips now. Like,
Right.
it's,
Right. No, I understand. I couldn't help it. Don't
no, you're
worry. It
fine.
has me too.
Well, I mean, I figured it would. That's why I said it. But
Well, yeah.
I feel like whenever I have this conversation with someone, it's always like, well, if the candidate was more like you would. And then we're just trying to find the line of where we draw, that red line of purity testing, right? Like, and I guess that really the whole point of the argument I'm trying to make is that that's not a good criteria for determining who gets your vote, at least not in the general election.
But
I
why
don't
not
think.
though? Why not though?
Because I think that have you this is going to go way out there for a second. Have you read The Art of War by Sun Tzu?
No, actually.
Okay, so
I'm terribly
he talks
unread
about
for an
how
American adult that actually does read.
I don't worry about it. It's all good. I recommend it. It's you can get it on Audible too. It's only like an hour long. It's definitely worth it.
Okay.
But
Neat. All right.
he's describing like the different factors that go into determining whether someone is successful in battle, right? And that's kind of where the saying like if you know yourself and know the enemy, you're going to win. If you know yourself but not the enemy, you're going to win a battle for every battle you lose, and if you don't know either, you're going to lose all the time. And I feel like one of those factors in that book is talking about the landscape of the battle, where the battle is fought, and the rules by which the battle operates, right? And I think that voting, especially right now in the situation we're in with the political climate in this country, is a battle right now. You and I, whether we acknowledge it or not, are embattled against, I don't want to say the government, quote unquote, but various aspects within the government.
We're embattled against
You can,
capitalism. You can say that without violating YouTube TOS.
yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe to a certain extent, for sure.
Yeah, to a
Like, I'm not
certain
a,
extent. Oh no, that's the war,
yeah,
my
well,
friend.
so you're just completely anti-capitalist. You don't feel
Not
like if there were certain safeguards, certain socialist policies that were put in place to account for the cruelty that happens in the capitalist system, that to you wouldn't be worth voting for, worth trying to accomplish.
well. Do you remember what I
So
said
sort of like,
earlier about how? Well, do you remember what I said earlier about how I'm a like a democratic socialist in the near to immediate future, and an anarchist in the
mhm,
long term? What I
yeah,
would say is that, yeah, I think those things are worth voting for 100%. I advocate for lots of them all the time. Universal healthcare is, I mean, it's something that a utopia would have, like a perfect leftist utopia would. It's something that it would have, but it's also something that a capitalist society could have and benefits from if you look at
hmm,
other countries that have it,
yep,
right? So, yeah, I would
exactly.
100% vote for those things. My problem is, right, the DNC has gone back on its position on universal health care. For a while in 2020, it seemed like that was going to be the new party position. They've gone back on that. They've gone to the right on
Yeah.
immigration in a really disgusting way.
Well,
And, you know, so it's
hold
like
on though.
that's not on the
Let's go back
ballot
to
for me.
healthcare for just. Let's go back to healthcare though for
Right.
just a second,
Yeah,
okay?
for sure. I'm not trying to
You and
take it
I
everywhere, but
agree.
I'm just using a few examples.
No, you're. Hey, I do the same thing, but there's something substantive here that I
Yeah.
want to kind of explore a little bit.
Okay.
So you and I think we both agree that we want everyone to have full maximum access to the best healthcare possible.
Yes.
And I think we both acknowledge that the reason that doesn't happen is because of agency capture in our government with insurance companies that, through nefarious legal means, essentially bribe our representatives so that they represent their business interests instead of our interests. Would you agree with
100%.
that?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I think you would have to
So
be a terribly irrational person to make an argument against that.
I know. I'm just laying the field, right? So
Right?
that's what happens. This is the battlefield of the battle we're fighting, right? Is that you and I can want single payer healthcare, universal healthcare for everyone. And I do think we can accomplish that, or at least we can accomplish something closer to that like they have in other countries. But we have to fight the battle we're fighting by the rules of the field we're on in order to make the future conditions more advantageous to us. And if we look at like Obama, who, yeah, he went back on single payer healthcare, but he did pass Obamacare, right? And that did provide access to tens of millions of Americans who didn't have access to healthcare, right? So if we're looking at what we want, which is for everyone to have coverage, and we have one option, which is Obama, which gives 10 million people coverage who didn't have it. And we have another option, which is Trump, who, I don't know if you've looked at the numbers, but last time he was president, like almost 3 million people lost health insurance under him.
Right.
And then you look at Biden again, when Biden was president, like the number of Obamacare people went up another 10 million people, from like 8% to 11% of the population was under it. So, I mean, do you acknowledge that voting for Democrats like Biden, like Obama, even though they do have flaws and they are agency captured by health insurance companies, they are moving the paradigm closer to what we want, and they are moving it closer to our goal, which is to have everyone covered, because we're able to get so many more millions of people coverage under them.
I mean, I would if Trump hadn't been able to get 3 million people uninsured through the tenure of his presidency. I mean, if Trump is able to take a giant chunk out of that progress and destroy it that easily, then
just wait. This time around, he's going to do a lot worse. It seems like.
I mean, I know
if Project. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I know you haven't heard a lot of my advocacy, but I'm not. Once again, despite what people will tell you, I'm not a Trump supporter. I think Trump's one of the, like, worst fucking presidents we've ever had, probably. Like,
yeah.
I just don't. I'm just pissed off at the DNC because they put up fucking butt hash.
Yeah.
For an opposition.
I'm pissed off at them too, definitely. I mean, look, if I had my way, Joe Biden would not be a free man, right? He's a genocidal war criminal. He shouldn't
at least
be.
We can agree there.
Hey, but he's a better president than Trump, right? Like that's the other thing. It's not even close. So look, we can talk about the millions of people who had healthcare. So I don't want to even do that because I feel like I'm dismissing the point you're making. The point you were making was that the gains under Democrats don't really matter because when a Republican is in there, they undo them, right?
Well, I'm saying some of those games. It's like Democrats used to be able to. It seems like Democrats used to be able to make changes that lasted, and it doesn't seem like the
like
last
FDR,
few administrations.
Right.
FDR is a perfect example. Thank you. Yes, FDR changed the way America works forever and always. I mean, some of that has been eroded now. A lot of it's been eroded now, but the shit that happened under FDR permanently changed what America was like for a working person, what America was like for a woman or a person with a family or any, like, it changed the way the fucking world worked effectively because it changed the way America worked completely. And I think he's a great example. My thing is, why have Democrats never... I mean, it's not like they've never been able to capture that success since then. I would point at a number of different Democratic presidencies, and like Clinton was able to get long-lasting change implemented. Fucking, I'm pretty sure
Clinton was kind of a mixed bag in my opinion. But he wasn't.
I mean, well, that's
for
the thing.
Sure.
Presidents used to be mixed bags. That's another fucking point.
Well, look, don't you think that Biden? Hold on. Now, forget like Biden and Clinton as individuals, right?
Right.
But you don't think that Biden's administration was better for our, I'm just going to group us in as like liberal, progressive, lefty kind of
that's fine.
wing. I don't know if, You don't think that Biden was a better president for us and our agenda in accomplishing our goals than Clinton was?
I
Look
don't
at
know. I would
like
really have
union
to weigh that
enrollment.
out. I'm honestly, and maybe it sounds like a cop out. I would have to weigh that out. I would have to like look at what got passed during their presidency. I know that the crime bill was passed during Clinton's presidency, and the crime bill is pretty fucking reprehensible. So nothing quite like that happened
Have
under the
you
Joe
looked up?
Biden presidency. So
Are you informed about Glass-Steagall under
Glass
Clinton?
Steagall. No, actually, but I
Look,
could
so
pull it up. We
I
could
don't
read
want
up
to
like a
I
quick
don't want
little
to get too
article
into
about
it
it.
because it's not my. I haven't looked into it recently, but
How do you
it
spell it?
in understanding like a lot of the deregulation that has happened since Clinton, and especially the housing market crash, you should check out Glass-Steagall. Just if you ever get a chance. I don't know if you ever like just spend time lost on Wikipedia or
I
whatever,
do.
but
I
you can
do.
find out. Yeah, you can find out a lot about how Clinton really set us up for Bush and for a lot of what's happened since with Obama. A lot of the disappointment that we had with Obama, with him being so ineffectual, and so much of the same, was laid under Clinton's presidency. But going back to Biden, though, I think that Biden, look, for healthcare, he was better than Clinton. For labor, he was better than Clinton. Look at union enrollment. He was the only president in like, I think in our lifetimes who I was born under Clinton, who in our lifetimes, who actually left office with higher union enrollment than he went into office with. Uh, you can look at the NLRB rulings under him, and then you can contrast this with the Republican administration. And I'm not even saying Trump, but just any standard Republican, right? Because right now we're looking at the parties, the DNC versus the RNC, and those things, those millions of people get healthcare. Those matter. It matters to me that transgender people are allowed to serve in the military, right? Under Biden, and that Trump, the first thing he did when he was in office, he took that right out of there. That
It's funny
matters
that
to
you.
me. That
I'm
Yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say it's funny that you bring that up because up until Trump got elected to the presidency, I was actually in the process of like losing weight and shit in order to join the U.S. Navy. So I people have
Oh,
asked me since
you're gonna
then, like,
you're gonna join the war machine then?
well, I was going to for the
Yeah,
socialism, yeah, for the socialism and the good paycheck. Hell yeah, I have a son.
yeah.
I have to do something for him. But my point is,
Okay,
I
yeah.
changed those plans when I realized Trump won the like when I watched the election results and watched Trump win. I was like, well, that plan's out the window because
Yeah,
I'm not gonna
and you're a
bother,
citizen of this
you know.
country. You deserve equal rights, right?
Oh,
Just
I
like I can
100%
join them,
agree.
just like anyone could join the military.
Yeah,
You
I
deserve that
agree.
right to do if you want to.
I agree.
Um,
Although I don't know if it's necessarily the greatest like issue to bring up. I mean, personally, it's not
well, look,
that convincing to me as a trans person.
okay, so I don't really believe in marriage personally, right? I don't
Yeah.
care. Like, I don't think I'm, I think the institution of marriage is kind of silly. It seems like, trying to have a government contract for something that really the government has no business being a part of. But, uh, it's still very important to me that, I have the right to get married, that gay people have the right to get married in the country, that we have equality. That's important. I pay
Okay, I
taxes.
see what you're
If
saying.
there's a Do you see what? So it's not so
Yeah, I
much
see what you're
that,
saying.
like, I don't care personally that I have a right to get married. Probably
I
I
mean,
don't. Who knows?
right, and I'm
But
not.
right now, it's not something that matters to me. But it would matter to me if I had authoritarians using the violence of government to prevent me from acting and behaving in a way with a right that everybody else has. Do you see? And so these, I'm sure you've heard that. First they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew, and then they came for, this minority, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't one of them, and then when they came for me, there was no one left to come for me. These matter. These little battles, they all matter. They're all very important. It's very important that transgender people have a right to serve in the military, have equal rights that everyone has, and it's very important that gay people have the right to get married, the right to adopt, whatever it may be. These are worth fighting for, and these differences are important. It really is for, and like you were saying, people join the military for economic reasons.
I was
and
planning on doing it.
right, exactly. It provides access to you that now you don't have, that you would have had if Kamala was president.
I get what you're
Would you
saying.
acknowledge that?
Um, repeat the point again, just to make sure.
So if Kamala had been elected, you would still have the right to serve in the military.
Yeah, I see no reason why she would have attacked that. But once again, that particular argument
Like,
is
why
like,
would she rescind Biden's executive order that allowed that?
well, no,
Right?
I just said she wouldn't. I just said she wouldn't.
Yeah. No, I'm agree. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood
Uh,
your tone of voice. You'll have to give me a break. I'm autistic as fuck, and I've not quite mastered the art of understanding tone of voice every time. You know. So.
no, you're good. When I get on a roll, I get kind of short, but I'm not.
Me too.
I'm not trying to step on you or anything, but.
You're fine.
But my point is, like, even though serving in the military isn't like the greatest, like, obviously healthcare would be a better right than that. Even though it's not the most important thing for you personally, it should still matter, and it still matters to me, right? And as an American, regardless of what specific issue it is and who the specific person being discriminated against is, we should all come together, and that should matter to us. And that's true of even the immigrants right now that are being held in a concentration camp at Gitmo. That should, that to me, that's a violation of human rights, and a violation of one minority's human rights is a violation of everyone's human rights in this country, I feel, or at least it should be.
I mean,
and I don't. Yeah.
I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is effectively. Like, I wish it was seen that way. I certainly agree that it should be looked at that way. And that's actually, it's interesting. I don't know if you've ever heard of the industrial workers of the world, but an injury to one is an injury to all is an adage that originally comes from the industrial workers of the world. And, as a proud wobbly, I'm glad to see that rhetoric is popping up in other places.
Okay, well, I'm not specifically familiar with that organization, but yeah, I think it's a universal ethic for the people, right? Us, the non-ruling class of the world. I feel like we understand this is a lesson that's had to be learned across all societies throughout history, that our strength, the way that we fight against tyranny, is through this solidarity.
I agree.
Now.
But
yeah,
I guess my problem is, right, I agree that it's important for these sorts of progresses to happen, and I agree that it would be a better world if they were defended, but I believe that you have to engage with, I think that you have to engage with voting very carefully, and I think this is one of those instances where, people are always, people of your particular political bent. I mean, you brought it up earlier, and you put it, what was it, the political calculus, or
utilitarian calculus.
Yeah, there we go.
It's just how,
right?
It's a meme about lesser evil voting, right?
I know, but
which decision is going to do the least harm?
But Vosh got it from people who were saying shit like, well, you do the math in your head and you figure out, well, this one's better than, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily like a super original thought to him. It's just like a unique way of putting it, and it's useful at least in this context, right?
It's actually utilitarianism is a John Stuart Mill philosophy.
Well, yeah, no, I'm not talking about utilitarianism. Yeah. I'm talking about that specific phrase being used to describe modern political decision making by liberal and leftist voters. But my thing is, if you're actually going to do that calculus, in my opinion, you have to consider the long-term effects that voting has. And there's a point that I've wanted to make all night, and I would love to make it now if you're down.
Go for it.
I think that when people vote for the DNC, when people on the left, mind you, when people on the left that believe in things like universal health care, that are anti-war, that are pro-drug legalization and regulation, that are actual leftists, right? When they vote for the DNC, despite their shift to the right over the course of the last 30 years, I look at that as them condoning that change. And I think the DNC looks at it the same way. I think that's why the DNC feels so comfortable shifting right. I think it's an attempt for them. I think you're partially right about them trying to shift right to get more voters from the right. Obviously, they're trying to get more voters from the right. But the reason they're trying to get more voters from the right is because they feel, in my opinion, like they've got everybody they're going to get on the left hooked. And they've got a shit ton of American leftists and liberals hooked. And I think they don't consider them as a voting base anymore. And I think the fact that they don't consider them as a voting base anymore is why they lost in 2024. Because I think the left overall, maybe not overall, but I think the left specifically, people that are farther to the left than maybe your average liberal, your average repetitive Democrat voter, people looked at the course of the Joe Biden presidency and said, this is not good enough. And
right.
I think that the margins that Trump won by, which I have pulled up on 270 to win. I think
it's only like a million and a half people, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can look at it. Let's see.
Well, before you get into that, there are like three distinct things I heard in there that I kind of want to respond to, if that's cool.
For sure.
But if you weren't finished making your point, you can. And
well, I guess my point was just, like to summarize it. I feel like we've been fucking ourselves over in terms of getting the Democrats to shift left and getting them to do leftist shit by voting for them, despite their shift to the right, despite their, not just their policy shift to the right, but the shift of their rhetoric to the right. I mean, do not come. What kind of Democratic candidate says that? What kind of fucking presidential candidate sits around and makes excuses for years and years about a genocide? It just seems so unlike the Democratic Party that I considered voting for in 2016 or the Democratic Party that I did vote for in 2020. And even then I felt burned because Biden pretty much immediately went back on a shit ton of his campaign promises. So I don't know. I would love to see how you would respond to that, but
okay, so
we can go on.
So the first, let's do it point by point. So the first point is that voting for DNC, doing the lesser evil vote, makes things worse over time. Like, it encourages the DNC to be more like Republicans over time because they know they can count on you and that they're going to get, by participating in that system, you're making things worse. Do I understand that part of it correctly?
Yeah. Well, kind of, basically, but I would just say the Republicans are usually the ones making things actively worse. It's usually just the Democrats not doing enough to shore things up, which, in my opinion, like, it's that old adage, evil prospers when good men do nothing,
But you're saying that voting to keep the DNC in power perpetuates that and makes it worse, correct?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so that's point one that I'm going to address. And then point two is that it encourages the DNC to move to the right because they're going to keep courting people, and that when we do that, we're actually hurting our causes, and we're sort of losing ground. So there's that aspect of it, and then there's the final point that you were making about how most people saw Joe Biden and said it wasn't good enough. And so I want to take like each of these points. So the first one, so it depends, right? Because if we're looking at healthcare, we have made gains in that, and it has gotten better incrementally over time. If we look at labor with Biden, it has gotten better over time. Even if we look at the economy, if we look at the way that Biden handled the recovery from COVID, and I know it seems like crazy to think about because things are such a mess right now, but if you look at other nations around the world, and see how like America did recovering from COVID versus like our, the allies that you would compare us to in Europe and other parts of the world, we actually did a pretty good job overall. Man, I can pull the statistics because I do have them somewhere in one of the videos. I use it, but I think that a lot of about the COVID recovery. So Biden's recovery from COVID versus our other allies. I can hunt it down if we need to, but I'm just saying, like, so if we look at that, Biden really wasn't that bad, and he was better. Do you think that Biden was better or worse than Obama? Let me ask you that.
Do I think he was better or worse than Obama?
Yeah, do you think that Biden was an improvement over Obama? Like, and I'm not saying individually, obviously Obama is a much more competent politician, but I'm saying like their administrations, like which one did more good versus ill?
Honestly, probably Obama. Um,
Why do you say
yeah.
that?
Well, the Affordable Care Act isn't perfect, but you made the point earlier that that it expanded coverage to. I don't know the specific numbers, but I know it's a massive amount of people. I'm a person who was personally affected by the Affordable Care Act, so I've got very little ill to say
Yeah.
about it, other than that I think it's so fucked up that the Democratic Party, and I'm sure the Republicans had their hand in it too, but I think it's so fucked up that it was allowed to happen, that public option got stripped from it. I think that that's fucked up, and I think the
Yeah.
Affordable Care Act would be a lot. It would be way better legislation if there was a public option, because then these insurance companies
I,
would actually have to they would have to compete with the public option, and so people who are still on private insurance would be getting way lower rates, and most people would probably just go with the public option. We would probably end up I think we would be looking at a universal healthcare system right now if that public option hadn't been deprecated from that legislation. But that being said, my mother was never able to get insurance before, or outside of her coverage that was included with, when she got pregnant, she got Medicaid for a while on the back of that. But as an adult, or not as an adult, but you know what I mean. After I
mhm.
aged out of that system and everything, she was not able to get health coverage as a self-employed person that wasn't covered by Medicaid until the passage of the Affordable Care Act.
I think. Yeah. Oh, okay.
So, I
Yeah. So,
think it could
so,
have gone
so that's
farther,
something in
but
your
it
life
was
that.
good. And I think that I don't
Okay.
know if there's anything that Biden did that was as sweeping as that.
Well, I mean, he expanded it, right? So, I mean, he built on that,
Did he?
but also with healthcare, I
I
mean,
genuinely
yeah, he
don't
did.
know.
So, I was saying, what?
I said, did he? I genuinely don't know.
He did. No, I was saying before, like he expanded coverage from like 8% to 11%. It was like 10 million more people or something under him,
That's not.
and that
I
was
mean,
all.
that's
Well,
good, but that. This is what I mean by it's not
well,
enough,
it's
right?
historically good, actually. It is. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I
I
feel like
want it to be
historically good would
everyone,
be like eight
right?
percent to 98%.
Well, I mean that would be historically good, but why it's historically good is because it's for it's better than what has happened before in terms of providing access. That's why it's historically good.
Yeah, but part
It's
of my
not
argument is
historically
that
good
what's been
because
happening so far is pretty shitty.
well, no, your argument is that voting for lesser evil Democrats makes things shittier and shittier, and my argument is that it does that sometimes, but sometimes it makes things better and better. And even if those
Yeah, but how
gains
do
are
you know which
smaller,
one
they
you're gonna
seem
get?
small at the time. I mean, look, like, would you not say you were saying that your mom was covered by the ACA? She didn't have healthcare before that?
No. I mean,
How
okay, so let
big
me
of an
clarify.
impact?
She had Medicaid when she got pregnant with me, and after that,
Hmm.
but before that, when she was just a self-employed adult or just an employed adult, she didn't have healthcare insurance, like any kind, because her employers never
Hmm.
offered it, and she was never able to afford it as a self-employed person with pre-existing conditions.
So that wasn't through the ACA program though that she was able to get that.
Do what? I'm sorry, I had to readjust my headphone.
No, you're fine. What I thought. I'm sorry. I had thought you said originally that it was through the ACA that program had become available to her. That it was during Obama's presidency when that
It
was
was. It was
passed.
because
That you was
the ACA. One of the things about the ACA is that it eliminated the ability
right.
of insurance companies to deny you on the basis of
Yeah.
pre-existing conditions.
Hmm. Okay. So I mean that. How big of a change would you say that made in her life? Right. Like, isn't that a
Massive
huge life
change.
altering thing?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty.
So I
Like
mean
it was a
that's it.
massive.
That. So what seems incremental when we're talking about like 8% to 11% to us, that seems small because there's so many hundreds of millions of people in America. But to one of the people who actually gets covered and their life is totally changed, it's not an incremental change. It's a huge impactful change, right? So it seems incremental on a large scale actually does matter substantively in the lives of individual people.
Well,
And look, it's the same thing with the executive orders that Trump has now rescinded, but under Biden that allowed them to negotiate drug costs for select drugs, which obviously I want them, I want drugs to be free for everyone because our taxes fund their development. But being able to negotiate insulin prices, there was like a provision that Biden passed. Oh man, I think it was during all the COVID relief. He passed like dozens of executive orders that made it so like states individually could start manufacturing certain drugs that had patents. Like I know here in California, they had a program where they now make like state insulin for people who are diabetic. That's way cheaper than getting it covered, however they previously had to do it.
yeah.
But so, I mean, things like that, we can say, well,
California's
I
a
want every drug
place
to be
with
free.
intelligent policy.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I was just complaining about my own state. I was saying, because California is a based place with reasonable policy.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, and we can go state to state. I'm kind of just attacking this from the perspective of like the federal government, but we can go more into it if you want. But I'm saying to people who are diabetic, who now that the government can negotiate that for them, even though it's not every drug and it's a very small amount of drugs, for the people that benefit from that, that makes a huge difference in their life. And if now that Trump's done away with that executive order, if those now they've lost the ability to negotiate new drug prices. So if those drug prices go back up, that's going to destroy their lives. So it's that kind of stuff. Like these incremental changes that happen slowly, and it always seems like progress happens so slowly and anti-progress happens so quickly. But the progress that does happen slowly is building towards something greater. And while it's happening to the people affected, it makes a world of difference. And I think that even if I'm just voting for everything the same, but the only difference is that 2 million more people have healthcare, I mean, that's an easy choice for me, right? Like, even if both parties, right? Even if both parties, they don't have the same position on Gaza, right? Trump's position is far worse on Gaza, but even if they have the same position on Gaza, just based on the 2 million people who would get healthcare, I mean, that to me is an easy choice.
I don't know. I feel like the DNC's position on Gaza is basically Trump's position on Gaza, but worded a little more nicely. I think if the DNC actually had a different policy on Gaza, then why did they not lift a finger to stop it? Like, I don't know. Just seems strange to me.
So they were pro genocide, right? I'll say that. I'm going to say that this is how I understand it, right? The DNC are basically cucked to Netanyahu, and they would allow Netanyahu to do whatever he wanted, but there were certain things that he couldn't do, right? Like, we wouldn't have allowed him to roll tanks into the West Bank, right? In the same way that they did under Trump now. There were limitations on the types of weapons they could use. The official foreign policy of the United States was not that we're going to take over Gaza and make the ethnic cleansing permanent, right? Like, that's something new that Trump brought. And you can say, well, that was behind the scenes the whole time. And I mean, I don't have any way to prove or disprove that.
Neither would I.
But you have to admit that the outward policies between Trump and Biden were different with Gaza. One of them was lip service of trying to limit civilian casualties, and we can look through that and say, well, that's a lie or whatever. But one policy is openly genocidal.
I mean,
and you can say that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like you brought up earlier about how, to those 2 million people who get healthcare that wouldn't have gotten it otherwise, that difference is massive, right? How massive is the difference between Trump and Joe Biden for a dead Palestinian child?
Does the child live in Gaza or the West Bank?
Does it matter?
Yeah, it does.
Why?
If we're saying the difference is between Biden and Trump, because Trump will allow them to annex the West Bank and continue the ethnic cleansing into the West Bank. And that was not something that Biden had allowed. Actually, we were sanctioning some of the illegal settlers in the West Bank. So, I mean, I'm just saying, like there are differences, right? But even let's pretend like it didn't matter, right? And that for them it was the same, okay? And in fact, let's say that their foreign policy was identical. Let's forget about any differences with them. That's not something that we had control over, right? I didn't have, no matter who I voted for, the genocide in Gaza was going to happen. It doesn't matter if Biden wins. It doesn't matter if Trump wins. It doesn't matter if I voted for Stein or didn't vote at all. No matter what I did, I could not affect that. But I could affect the people having health care. That's something I can make a difference in. And so I'm not going to look at a decision and say, like, well, I wish this decision would let me affect the world in this way, but it doesn't. So I'm just not going to affect it in the way that I could, right? Like, I wish that I had the decision to stop the genocide, but since I don't have that decision, I'm also going to say fuck it to people getting healthcare too, right? That's how I feel the position that you're describing is inherently, right? That's kind of when we strip it down, because there's a lot of shit we don't have control over, but we do have control over other things. And saying, like, because I don't have control over this, I'm not going to participate in the ways that I could, to me just seems self-defeatist, but also solipsistic.
I mean, I would disagree that we don't have any control over it. I think the reason that we don't have any control over these things on a policy level is because we've relinquished control of it. Like, we've completely relinquished control of
I'm saying that voting, right? I'm saying specifically voting for president. That, like, there are ways we can control it, definitely, through like protests, through boycotts, through different actions. I do think
I'm talking about
we
the
can
presidency too,
affect
though.
change.
I'm talking about that too. I'm saying that Democratic voter habits over the last 30 years have influenced Democratic Party policy and have influenced Democratic Party internal politics. I think the fact that that the left is willing to vote blue no matter who so many fucking times in a row, no matter what's put up there, no matter what the policy of the last 4 years of worth of Democratic administration is, I think that the fact that that has been true for so many years, and if you look at the fucking election statistics from last year, it seems to be changing. I really hope so. But I think that that allowed the DNC to feel like they can govern, like, completely irrespective of what the left wants. And I think that it has allowed them to put up candidates who will allow someone like Netanyahu to run roughshod over the Palestinian people. I think that if we had been more responsible with our voting over the last 30 years, Obama, he was fine. Biden, I'm sorry, I regret that I voted for Biden.
Wait,
I wouldn't have preferred to vote for
Obama
Trump,
fine?
but do what?
Hold on, why was Obama fine? He increased the drone war like by hundreds of percents, like over Bush, right? He continued all of Bush's war crimes.
You know
Right?
what? You're
Why was he
actually
fine?
right.
He
Yeah, no, fuck Obama
he
too.
participated in the genocide in Yemen
You're
that
right.
Trump
No,
really carried out,
yeah,
but
no, you're right.
it started under
You're right.
him.
You're right.
So I mean, but look, but hold on, but no, hold on. I'm
You
right in
interrupted
that
my
that's a
point,
valid
so
objection to what I know. I'm right in that that's a valid objection to what you're saying about Obama being good by your criteria, but that's not the point of why I'm saying it. The point of why I'm saying it is that Obama was fucked up, but it was good that your mom has health care, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, if we had voted for John McCain or Mitt Romney or whatever, you know, the guys that Obama was against, that wouldn't have changed our foreign policy. It's not like we would have pulled out of the wars immediately and
since
ended
when
our
have I
support for
advocated
Saudi
voting for
Arabia's
a
genocide.
Republican? When did I
What?
ever? When have I
No,
ever
well, hold
advocated
on.
voting for a Republican? I feel like
Those,
hold the phone. I feel like this accusation
sure.
it's made to me all the time. Every single time someone that is not in, like, total agreement with just voting for the DNC no matter what, every time somebody
Hmm.
argues this, I feel like this accusation is made of them that we just want to fucking vote for Republicans. I've been advocating voting for fucking third
No,
parties, my friend, so I don't
right.
think the answer was voting for fucking John McCain or Mitt Romney. I know why those guys are pieces of shit, alright? My
Okay.
advocacy is for voting for third parties or coalescing our movement into a new, like, American Labor Party or something like that. But it's not like I think this
Right.
duopoly is what's fucking us. I think the fact that there's just two parties in America and they're both right-wing parties and they're both bought by billionaires, I think that's a massive part of the problem.
Okay. So this is a criticism that I think when people say, like, not voting for the DNC, that's supporting the Republican. Do you understand why they say that?
Yes, I do understand it, but I don't agree with the criticism.
But I mean, it's not like a moral criticism, or it's like a logical mathematical criticism.
Right,
right?
but I don't think the math
So it's kind of like
out.
now you said we live in a two-party duopoly, and you don't like that, but it's a fact that we live in a two-party duopoly, right?
It's a fact that we live in a two-party duopoly, largely because, and I'm sorry, largely because people with your mindset utterly refuse to support a third party unless they're perfect, but are willing to support the Democratic Party no matter how fucked up the politician is.
That's simply just pragmatism, right? Because a third party wouldn't win, but the Democrats could win.
A third
And
party
if
could
you
win.
vote for a third party, hold on. A third party could win if everyone who votes for the DNC votes for them. That's just not realistic to do in one election cycle.
Or if plenty of people who normally vote for the DNC and the fucking massive amount of registered voters who did not vote voted. I mean, like, let's see here. I actually have it pulled up somewhere. So let's see. So total ballot. So the turnout rate for 2024 was 63% of voting eligible population. 63%.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me that
well, that doesn't mean people registered to vote, right? That just means.
Let me make my point. Let me make my point.
Yeah, sorry.
That's 63% of voting eligible population in the United States. That leaves us with 35.1% of that leaves us with like 35.1%, I think, of eligible voters that could be won over to something if they heard the right argument. Now, you're not going to win over all of them. That's fucking pie in the sky dreaming. But you might win over 25%. And if you could then win over 25% of Democrats, or God forbid, 50% of Democrats, then you've got a real fucking contender. Now you're talking. Now you're cooking with gas. Why do we discount that massive block of people? There's a reason why those people don't vote in most cases. It's not out of laziness. It's not out of lack of giving a fuck. A lot of them have thought it out. And you can say that they're wrong. You can say that they're stupid. But they are fucking voting eligible and not doing it for some reason. If those people could be won over, we could make real progress on getting a third party elected. No one ever engages them.
Okay, let me respond to that in two ways. So, first, I think we should have more third-party voting, but I don't think that the way that a third party is going to get power, to me, realistically, seems that if we get ranked choice voting in the country, not if everyone abandons the DNC to vote for them. You're talking about changing. First of all, there has to be a movement of solidarity between tens of millions of people. You have to be able to predict the behavior of tens of millions of people who are all going to come together and make that decision on that date for the same purpose at the same time. That's not that's not something that you individually have control over, right? Like when you're talking about the individual choice you can make, you voting for the Green Party is not going to get them elected because you're just one person.
No,
but it's not
advocating. Hold on, but me advocating for other people to vote for the Green Party might win over a person here or there.
And sure, but if you win over enough, but in the process of winning over people to the Green Party, you're presumably taking them away from the Democratic Party. So as you're building up this third party, the Democratic Party is getting weaker and weaker, right? And I understand that's your goal. But when that happens, what happens to the two-party duopoly?
What do you mean what happens?
What's happening to the Republican Party as the Democrat Party is getting weaker and broken up?
I mean, they've already gone pretty fucking... I mean, like, prominent members of that party are already doing the Nazi salute. How much farther to the right can they really go? I mean, like, I'm anti-Republican
I don't even mean
so, you know.
I don't even mean ideologically. I mean, where are they going in terms of their influence and strength and power?
I mean,
we're moving in order
voters, they're like the reason Trump won in 2024 was largely down to economics. If you look at the statistics, if you look at the exit polling, it was about economics.
that's borne out all over the world in almost every country except for like Mexico.
Which is weird.
Almost. Well, no, it's not. I mean, and you know, as a socialist or someone who wants that as a goal, Mexico has a social democrat for president right now.
I did hear that.
Who was
so
able
maybe things are changing in Mexico.
And so Gloria Scheinbaum, I think her name is.
Yeah, that's her name, yeah.
So she was able to more successfully, or at least more equally, let's say, there was more economic equality in her COVID recovery than any other place in the world. I think she was kind of like the Bernie Sanders style politician of Mexico.
Well, that's cool.
So she was immensely popular. Yeah, but everywhere else, like here, everywhere else that we, it's basically a referendum on whoever the ruling party is. They're getting voted out. So I don't think there's a, like you were saying, I don't think more people are becoming necessarily more conservative. I think there definitely are some segments of certain demographics doing that. But I think that it was just the economics were so bad, but people didn't, and I don't think people were principled in the way that you are, in that they don't like the Democrats and that's why they didn't vote for them. They were upset with the Democrats because of the economics. But if we had prospered economically after COVID, they would vote for the Democrats. They wouldn't care about the genocide or healthcare or any of that. They would just be happy that
I agree with you there.
Economically, they're doing well, right?
Yeah.
So we're not. So okay. So but hold on. So as we're moving people out of the Democratic Party and into the Green Party, the Republican Party is either staying the same or maybe getting a little bit stronger, right? Just based on the trend that's happening now.
Yeah.
So in order for the Green Party to get strong enough to contend with first the DNC, but then the RNC, we're taking away all the power from the DNC, and we're essentially making America go from a two-party duopoly to a one-party state, right? Because as this other opposition party gets weaker and weaker, which we're already so weak, but as that trend continues, and the Republicans are either staying the same or getting a little bit stronger, right, or a lot stronger, depending on the oligarchy influence there, how long that can go unchecked. It's sort of like
how that works for sure.
Right. So I'm saying, but you don't see how this is. So your plan is to take support away from the DNC, funnel it into the Green Party, and to do this in such a short amount of time that we can do it and not completely give over the country to the Republicans, who, if they had full control, why would they even allow another election, right? Like, why would they even allow you to vote for a Green Party candidate at that point? If they're the Nazis, right? And I think we agree they're the Nazis, right? They want authoritarianism. Why wouldn't they just do away with democracy? Why would they even allow that to happen? Why would they give you the time to make a more effective oppositional party to the one that exists? This is not a good strategy for getting the Green Party into power. The best strategy for getting the Green Party into power is to get ranked choice voting, right? To pass that through legislation. I mean, that's how we're going to break up the duopoly. We're not going to break up the duopoly by hoping everybody agrees with us randomly in one of the most divided countries in the world. There's no way. Your idea just seems like a fantasy to me, and that's why people say when you advocate for that the way that you do, you're de facto, even though you're not advocating for the Republican, your advocacy de facto leads to the Republican victory. Does that track? Do you understand where that criticism is coming from?
I track, but to me, in my mind, that should not mean that people conflate my position with I want to vote for John McCain.
That's not what I'm saying, right?
Well,
and
no,
when I was doing the analogy, I wasn't saying.
That is what you said earlier, though.
No,
it is what you said earlier. It is what you
I'm
said
saying
earlier.
that if I were, that's not what I said. So I said that if I were voting for Obama,
you said if we had all just voted for John McCain or Mitt Romney back in 2004, or I'm sorry, 2008,
that wouldn't have changed the foreign policy, right?
Yeah. So, but my position was never to vote for John McCain or Mitt Romney. So that's what I understand.
I understand, but what I'm implying is that your position is de facto a vote for them, even though you don't want them to win. Well, but if we do that math again, it kind of is, because it is ensuring a Republican victory by taking votes away from the Democrats in that scenario.
No. Not voting for something cannot be voting for something.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's de facto benefiting them, right? and I wasn't trying to strawman your position or whatever, or paint it as your perspective. I'm saying that if I were voting, right, in the Obama elections, right, and I was too young to vote in the Obama election, but
Me too.
if I had voted for, right, if I had voted for John McCain, right, instead of Obama, that wouldn't have changed the foreign policy, but that would have basically guaranteed that your mom didn't get health care, right? Whereas if I voted for Obama, it wouldn't have changed the foreign policy, but it did give health care to people. That's what I'm saying the difference is. So when I'm not saying that you, by not voting for Obama, would have voted for John McCain or want John McCain to win. I'm just saying like the default position of Obama or McCain, that dichotomy that we were in that specific election cycle, wouldn't have changed the foreign policy. We didn't have control over that, but we did have control over getting people health care.
So can I ask a question to clarify something?
That's the point I was making. Okay. Sure.
So are you saying that there is literally no way to get a third party elected in the United States of America without getting rid of first past the post voting and without introducing ranked choice voting, right?
I'm saying that it's far more likely to do it through ranked choice voting in my mind than to do it the way that you're suggesting through.
All right. Well, that's a more nuanced position than I gave you credit for, I suppose. Yeah, I just don't know.
Well, look, I'm not. Okay. I want to break up the two-party duopoly too. I agree with you. A lot of your criticism that you make about how these parties play off of each other to fuck over the American people, I agree with you on that. Okay, right. But just your strategy, just to me, does not make any sense at all. It seems like it would make things way worse, because in the striving to make the Green Party this contender, in order for that to happen, the only way for that to actually happen is in my mind, and again, I feel like we've gone through the scenario already, but is first, before that happens, the Republican Party has to be a one-state party in the country and have control over everything as the Democratic Party gets weaker.
And your fear is that the Republicans will somehow manage to turn America into a dictatorship during that time, basically?
I think, well, I mean, they're already trying to do that, right?
Well, they're already trying to, but that's one of the things I always bring up when I'm having this argument with somebody, whether it's in chat or in real life. I always point out that, like, Republicans try that quite a bit. I mean, the Patriot Act was
they're getting
like
better.
A massive infringement on people's civil rights, and the shit that Trump did
well,
in
it was
his
a
first
constitutional
term.
violation.
Oh, well, yeah, like that, and the shit that Trump did in his first term was moving in that direction. I think that's just kind of the direction the Republicans go in always, but I think that the wall that they run up against is the strength of American systems. Like, maybe I'm totally fucking wrong, maybe I'm just a starry-eyed dreamer, but I do not believe that this country could be... I think you would need some crazy drastic shit to turn this country into a non-democracy. Like, and I think that it would need to be somebody that isn't, like, about to be 80, you know? And I would think that it would need to be, like, a party full of people that weren't 80 and above, right? I just don't look at the Republican Party
I mean, Elon Musk is an 80, J.D. Vance is an 80, Mike Johnson is an 80.
No, but Mitch fucking McConnell is, I don't know how old he is, but I know he's fucking...
Yeah, but he already has his replacement ready to take his... He's already got a new guy ready to go. Okay, but he already has someone lined up ready for when he gets...
But here's the thing. But can I just say, though?
Hold on. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, like, the points you're making just make me think, damn, really wish we would have done this then before the fucking Republican Party that everybody understood to be old fucking fuddy-duddies 10 years ago. Would have been nice if we would have engaged in this policy 10 years ago when they were an ineffectual bunch of boomer retards that we had no effective counter, that had no effective counter against us. And, you know, it's a real shame that we've waited around with our thumbs up our asses until all these fucking Republican conservatives are able to set up replacements for themselves. Some of which being worse than them.
We talked about Trump appointing judges, right?
Well,
so this has been
Brett Kavanaugh, etc.
And you talked about how you have this faith in our institutions to withstand the fascist impulses of the current administration. Now,
for the most part,
Republicans, you're right. You're right that Republicans have been wanting this forever, and they do hit that wall that is our institutions, or whatever it may be. You're right about that. Okay. But for the last 50 years, really since the Heritage Foundation, this has been what they've been trying to do. They've been getting better at doing it, and they're incredibly successful at what they try to do. The Heritage Foundation were the ones who got Reagan elected, who cut the tax rate on the highest earners down to like 40% or something from where it was at 90%. So they're able to get what they want done, and they are able to destroy our institutions. So, it's not like they're incompetent and they just do the same thing over and over and they always fail. It's that these people are part of a conspiracy that's been going on for 50 years, and they're getting better and more effective, and we can see that in the current administration. So let's go from Reagan to George W. Bush, and you brought up the Patriot Act, right? And it's not just the Patriot Act that was such a problem with George W. Bush, that the war criminal that he was.
Right.
It was that the people in his cabinet, like Rumsfeld and Cheney, were very strong believers in unitary executive theory.
Right.
The idea
I was actually
that
talking about that earlier on stream.
Okay. But you see how that is more extreme now under Trump.
Oh, of course. That's one of the things I was talking about, not to interrupt, but yeah.
So the opposition to Bush, you could say, was greater. The opposition to Trump during his first term was greater. Elon Musk would not have been able to waltz into the Treasury and steal your information during his first term, right?
No, I think, can I just say, by the way, I think Musk is a far bigger danger than Trump. Just going to put it out there.
I think they both need to be removed.
I don't think either one of them is a good guy. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying fucking...
Yeah.
If there's anybody in that fucking regime I'm worried about, it's motherfucking Elon Musk. I don't think that dude has a scruple in his entire body. And I think Elon Musk is... you know how there's... you know how Trump is kind of like a dumb fuck outside of a couple of different areas? He understands how businesses work, and he seems to understand how politics work. And then there's people who are just like really good at acting stupid, clever like a fox motherfuckers. Elon Musk is that. I was making this point the other day. You do not invest in as many tech companies and have the workplace habits that his workers have described him having unless you're spending all day poring over every fucking little engineering file you can get your hands on like a fucking geek. So Musk is actually probably wily enough to worm his way. I mean, obviously he's wily enough to worm his way into the fucking treasury and steal our information. Like you said, what the fuck else is he going to get up to? Now, I guess you could make the argument that Trump is really the one at fault because he's the one that allowed him in there. But, if Musk wasn't there, then he would have no one to allow into that position, right?
Look, I think all you've done with this is convince me that lesser evil in this instance is pointless. They're both scumbags. They both need to go. They're both going to destroy your country.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I don't agree that they will. I think that they're trying, but I think
they're trying to
kicked back to a Democrat in 3 years, and then we'll all be talking about how swell everything is in a month. A month into the presidency, we'll be talking about how great everything is, and it'll be back to brunch, as Paul says, and
I disagree. You can't. I mean, if we're lucky, that's look, that's the thing, right? Like under Trump, our best case scenario is that we're back to Biden. We're back to corporate Dems, not accomplishing anything and just keeping fascism away.
Wouldn't it be nice if the DNC had given us a nice candidate last year to vote for? One that didn't fucking repel everybody?
Yes, it would have. Well, I don't know. I honestly am a bit more sympathetic to Kamala, I think. Well, the way she ran her campaign, at least. I don't think she ran a bad campaign until the point where she had Cheney out there. I think that she kind of shit the bed at that point, but that was only the last month. I think there was a point, especially when she had appointed Walz as her running mate, where it seemed like she had some real populist momentum behind her. Maybe you have a totally different take.
I'm sorry.
I felt like Walz was really that when she had appointed Tim Walz as her VP.
I like Walz. Yeah.
I felt like she had some populist momentum behind her, I thought she could take it at that point.
Yeah, I mean,
to
honestly,
me, it seemed crazy that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, at that point in her candidacy, I was like, you know what? I mean, if she keeps up this trend, if she changes some of her policy to mirror some of Walz, because Walz is that. I mean, he's the governor that did all that leftist shit for Minnesota, isn't he?
Yeah, school lunches.
Yeah. So I was like, I was part of that populist swing or whatever you said. I mean, I just, like when I
that
saw
that
that her
doesn't happen in a
candidacy. Sorry, what?
that doesn't happen in a vacuum though. Like he works in tandem with the federal government. A lot of these good things that we have in blue states like Minnesota or California are a collaborative effort between the state governments doing some part of it and the
Oh,
federal government doing some part of it, right?
oh, that's actually true even in conservative states. I mean, I live in the deep south. I know I
Right.
mentioned earlier that I live in Mississippi, and
Mm-hmm.
I grew up here until I was 14, and moved back down here as an adult to run the farm and shit, or I guess be tutelaged in the doing so, and had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of experience with this place's politics and the way that the way that the sausage is made, so to speak, and down here, the South, Mississippi and Louisiana in particular, are deeply reliant on federal grants in order to provide
Right.
disaster relief that they can never afford. It's just not an option in like the South's fucking. Uh,
And Trump's denying them FEMA aid right now, isn't he?
um, is he? I would believe it.
Wasn't there
I
some?
mean, I would believe it,
There was
but
some story. He I don't remember. It wasn't. So I know yesterday there was a fire in South Carolina, right? But prior to that, I don't remember because man, these news stories now, especially with like natural disasters, for me, it's like in one ear and out the other because it's just
so common.
obviously the ones around here that were happening in January in LA
Oh,
were
dude, yeah.
notable for me
I hope you're
specifically.
okay,
But
by the way. Like, I
uh,
hope that shit didn't fuck up your
yeah,
life, because that shit sucked.
I'm about like a good 30-45 minute drive south of all that. So I'm, like 50 miles away from, so I was all right. But uh, yeah, it's like, these natural disasters I was saying, just they all sort of run together in my head for the most part. But there was one prior to the fires yesterday in South Carolina where there was something where he was denying them aid. I don't know if it was Georgia or somewhere around there, but yeah, and I mean, that's another area where there's substantive differences between Republicans and Democrats, and with Project 2025, that plans for cutting FEMA and for not giving that sort of federal aid or the aid that your states are dependent upon for like healthcare or whatever, right? That's another big difference between Democrats and Republicans. Look at the budget that they're trying to pass in the Republican-controlled House right now that slashes $800 billion from Medicaid. In Project 2025, and this is kind of a tie-in to the whole Brian Thompson assassination. Brian Thompson was implementing at United Health this, I don't know if you've heard about this program where they had an AI bot that would automatically reject like 90% of coverage or whatever.
Oh,
And
yeah, I
so
remember that.
doc,
Yeah.
the doctors would have to appeal that automatic rejection, and then after that it would get approved. But only like 0.2% of people actually appealed the first rejection. But the reason that's relevant is because that's what happens under Medicare Advantage, right? So there's default Medicare and there's Medicare Advantage. And Medicare Advantage requires insurers to approve certain things that default Medicare doesn't. And Medicare Advantage also has a lot of higher out of pocket costs for people with that program versus people who just have default Medicare coverage. So these sort of AI bots are used to deny people who have Medicare Advantage healthcare. And Project 2025 calls for making Medicare Advantage the default Medicare program. So it's basically a kickback to these insurance companies, which of course is just agency capture and corruption and terrible, right?
Right.
But the practical effect of that is now so many more people are going to get denied and not know what to do when they get that initial denial. So many more people are now going to have 9,000. And I looked up on one of the videos that we actually go through the article. Now, so many more people are going to have this deductible that they can't afford before they can get health care. So I mean, these differences do matter a lot, and for red states also.
Yeah,
That when it comes down to the things we actually can change, it just, to me, that's worth it. That keeping default Medicare even against Medicare Advantage, for me, that would be worth voting for Harris over Trump.
the problem for me.
And I know you say, yeah, Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, but, well, I feel like we're kind of we're getting to the point in a debate that I feel like all debates eventually get to, where you're more or less like going in circles because you finally reached the core of what you disagree on, and I think ultimately what we disagree on is uh, it's hard for me to put concisely, but maybe it's
Tactics, right?
tactics. Yeah, it's tactics, but more specifically, it's whether or not uh, non-participation in voting broadly or not voting for Democrats specifically has any effect on, or has a positive effect rather, or just an entirely negative effect on um, politics in the future. And, you know, like I think you were about to say, yeah, I would make the point that, I mean, you're still doing what I said earlier and condoning the DNC's shifts to the right in other areas, and ultimately that
No,
permission
no,
is
no, no.
going to allow them to. Oh, that's not the point you were going to make.
Uh,
Then do
so
correct me.
let's have a talk about tacit consent, right? Because
Okay.
this is something that seems really crazy to me. The idea that voting for a candidate is supporting everything they do when they're in power, right? I mean,
I'm
that
not.
that's
Yeah, no, I'm just.
well,
Let me just stop you there because I
well, what
don't.
you said was that I'm condoning the DNC's shift right by
I think
voting
that's the way
for
the
them.
DNC looks at it. I don't think that's what you're actually doing. So sorry if
Okay.
that wasn't clear.
Yeah, that I just was
I'm
confused
sorry.
about that,
You're
but
right. That
so
was
I guess we don't need to have the
incorrectly
conversation about
phrased.
tacit consent.
No, you're right.
But
Well, I mean,
I mean, maybe I should just
yeah. Go ahead.
maybe I should just make this point because
Go ahead.
I do hear a lot, from that person who I'm not going to pretend like you agree with on everything, but this is something that they seem to bring up a lot. That if you vote for like Harris, for example, that's somehow voting for the genocide, right? Or
Right.
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that's not how tacit consent works, right? Tacit consent is the idea that by participating in a society, you're agreeing to its rules, basically, right?
Oh,
And the
yeah.
way that
Okay,
we
I
would
know this.
So the way that it would work is that I'm tacitly consenting to the genocide when I pay taxes, not when I vote, right?
Right. Right.
I'm not
No, I would
voting
never
for
hit you
Harris to
with the.
continue the genocide. I'm voting, I condone the genocide. I fund the genocide when I pay taxes. And no matter who I vote for or if I don't vote at all, I'm still in that way funding the genocide. I still tacitly support the genocide no
Of
matter who I
course.
vote for.
Um.
That's the concept of tacit consent, right? So it's not like you vote for a Democrat, so you're condoning everything they do, or you're tacitly in agreement with everything they do, or you're lending your support to what they do. That's not how it works. When you pay taxes, you do that. So I think that's another thing, because I know you don't specifically say that, but when someone like Paul, for example, will point at something really evil that Joe Biden did and say, I'm not going to sign my name next to that. This is a fallacy. This is a breakdown in thinking about how your existence and participation actually affects what we do in the country. I just want to make that point. I'm not trying to say you were, now that I understand you're not arguing for that, but I just want to put that point out there because I think that maybe, some of those people who watch you or some of those people who know you from Paul's streams might think like that and might have a misunderstanding about tacit consent in that way.
Oh yes. I'm sure they do. Um. Like nobody you talk to is gonna have like a 100% correct interpretation of everything you say all the time. So I'm sure that I would be sure that happened even if I was um, coming at it from Paul's exact position. But I will say, I can't obviously speak for Paul. I'm not him. Once again, despite what some people will tell you, and um, I can't speak for him. But I have always gotten the impression that that bit of rhetoric. I never took it that literally, I guess. I always kind of, maybe this is just me interpreting uh, a more accessible or a less emotional kind of argument to his argument, but I always took that as him making an emotional plea for why people should be more responsible with their vote in the ways that I've advocated for. Um, and I guess it is in a way that does kind of imply that you personally are signing off on that. And in fact, he's kind
Right.
of made that argument before. I mean, in the lead up to the like quote unquote debate that he had with Jamie, he made
Hmm.
that point a bunch of times. And in many of his streams surrounding that event, he was talking about how, you know, if you voted for Biden, you might as well. He said something one time along the lines of like, if you voted for Biden, then you might as well have your name written on every single bomb dropped on Palestine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And the truth is that
that I
Paul
don't
should,
agree
because
with.
Paul, let's be real, probably pays more in taxes than you or I, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you know, and I
So if
think he would
anything,
admit that.
Paul funds the genocide. He supports the genocide more than you or I do,
I mean, I don't know
right?
about you, but I
Like
didn't make enough.
practically.
I didn't make enough money to last year to pay taxes, so um,
Oh, I mean, I have two jobs, so yeah, I definitely pay taxes.
I mean, I made enough
Yeah, but
to pay in, but I got like I make so well. I'm about to be making way more when I get this other job, but as of
good.
right now, I
Yeah.
make like $14,000 a year. And living in
Oh, okay.
Mississippi with roommates, you can live
Yeah.
on that, but it's a very fucking sparse living.
Is it the federal minimum wage in Mississippi?
Uh, yeah, yeah. Mississippi doesn't have its own state
Damn.
minimum wage. I do not make the federal minimum wage. I make $10.26 an hour, but um,
Yeah.
that's not that much fucking better.
No, no. I mean,
No.
for Mississippi maybe, but yeah, I definitely wouldn't be able to, live in this area. But this
Hell
area is
no.
ridiculously expensive anyway. So,
Yeah, but I don't think
uh,
there's a single place in California you could make it on 14 grand a year. I don't know, dude. Maybe if
maybe
you
in
owned your own
Madeira.
land. Maybe what?
Yeah. Maybe in Madeira. I
uh,
was joking.
you know what? It's funny you say that because actually, after I visited the Central Valley of California and the Central Coast, I considered seriously moving my life out there. And the thing that talked me out of it was that even in the
Mhm.
fucking valley, cost of living is so fucking high that it just threw me off. I was like, man, my southern ass ain't equipped for this
Yeah.
shit. Hell no.
Yeah. I mean, you make more though.
Well, that's
Like you would
true.
probably be making twice as much here than you do there, right?
That's 100% true.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure what you do, and I don't know if you share that publicly. I'm super cautious about what I share about what I do personally online, so I don't like talking about my job online. But I'm not sure exactly what your job is or if you share that. But I feel like just the state minimum wage I think is like $16-17 an hour now, and I know
Right.
that the LA County where I live is more than that, but I just for the minimum wage. So I mean yeah, I feel like whatever job it is, you'd probably be making twice as much as you do where you are. Also, there's that aspect of it too.
I
Um,
don't talk too much about it, but yeah, I work at a fast food restaurant. I work a dying job. I'm a front lobby cashier, or at least I was until the company I work for decided that orders aren't going to be taken by human beings in the lobby anymore. It's going to be all
huh,
kiosks and mobile orders. So um, that severely impacted my ability to get hours doing the closest equivalent of that job because you only really need to be there for 3 hours if you're just cleaning the lobby, cleaning the kiosks, cleaning the bathrooms, and taking out the trash. You know, if you're
mhm.
not
Yeah,
ringing people up as a primary expression of your duties, then they don't need to have you there for 6 hours. They don't need to have you there for 4 hours. They just really need you for three. And so they've been having to put me in other places and swap me around. That's one of the reasons why I got this other job, which I'm not going to be talking about as much because, um, like, I don't even want to say what company it is or even too much about what industry it is.
yeah.
I have
Don't
said,
don't don't share
a
that
little bit,
shit
but
online,
not
especially
much.
doing like the contentious kind of shit that we do. And
Right,
I'm sure you get a lot of
right.
hate. Don't
Oh,
don't
so
share that.
much.
no,
Yeah, no,
no, unless you can afford the risk of like someone trying to like get into your personal life and fuck with your job. I wouldn't share that.
right,
Um,
right.
online, yeah.
Yeah, no, I
But it's
definitely.
funny you talked about working in fast food because in California they have the right to a union here. For fast food workers have collective bargaining, and that's something new that Gavin Newsom passed under the current Biden administration here.
Well, you remember what I said
So
about. You remember what I said about how I think liberal governments
we're
on the state
paid
level
for
can be effective. You know.
yeah, yeah, yep. Um, You know, I do want to go back though to
Oh, sorry, baby.
man,
Not you.
to
I
the
was talking to my
core
partner.
of. No, you're good. To the core of our disagreement on that lesser evil voting, and you did take offense to how I said that, uh, a vote for the Green Party at this point is de facto a vote for Trump. Basically, is how I feel, and
Right.
I think I did. Do you feel like I did a good job explaining that, or do you want me to clarify my reason for why I feel that way?
Uh, I wish that I had the ability to be like a Machiavellian schemer and just be like, no, obviously you defended it horribly. No, I think your explanation overall was pretty reasonable. Um, I just like you don't like it when Paul makes arguments that make it sound like a human being is actually saying yes to every bomb that falls from a B-52 under the
Right.
Biden presidency, right? I don't know that I don't know that I'm a big fan of the idea that my principled and nuanced choice, which whatever, I'm not trying to sound like a pompous asshole, but I like to think that I've thought this through at least a little bit, and I think that my choice to do that should be taken as that choice. I think it should be examined a little more deeply than just, well, that's just a vote for Biden, or I'm sorry, that's just a vote for Trump, because it
Okay.
is more than that. I mean, if enough people did that, you would have to agree. Like you said, it was more likely that we get it through ranked choice voting, but more likely means there's like a 1.3% chance that we could get it through the whatever, the crazy keyhole pass of like we convince enough people, you know? So,
Yeah. Yeah. If you walk the exact path you need to get the exact future you need to. But that's irrational though, right? Like
well, I
to
don't think
think
it's
that.
one exact path though. I think that's where we would disagree too. I think there's a
Well,
number
but
of
I'm saying
paths you
that
get
in
to that
order,
place from.
what I'm saying though is that the evidence and all the math that we can do, there's so many things that have to work out a specific way, and so many things that the Republicans have to not do in the meantime in order to get the thing that you want, right? And I feel like it's irrational to work for that when working for that is going to weaken our position in a million other ways and make it harder for us in to the point where it might not even matter if we do accomplish what you're trying to accomplish with that. But the way that you want to accomplish that, there's better ways to do it where we don't have to risk all those things and where it is more likely to happen, right? And I feel like if what I I obviously know that I'm not gonna like get you to admit like, oh, you're right, I should have voted for Harris or whatever. You live in a deep red state, your vote ultimately doesn't matter. I live in a deep blue state, my vote ultimately doesn't matter. The reason we're having this discussion, at least from my perspective, is that we get this conversation out to more people, to a broader audience, so that people who do live in swing states can engage with this. um and
Yeah.
what I would want ideally is for you to acknowledge like what you're saying makes sense. Like the thing I'm advocating for is irrational in the way that it's most likely not going to lead to what I want it to lead to the way that I do, and that the way to accomplish what I want makes more sense through other means. I don't know. That's what I would like for you to kind of argue with and to grapple with.
Yeah, I mean, I just disagree. I think that the main reason that we haven't been able to solidify enough people around a third party to do it is, in my opinion, it's mainly because people who have been voting for the DNC usually either keep doing it or kind of quietly die as a voter, so to speak. You know, like they just kind of like passively give up in an infinitely pathetic sigh. Um, and that you really want to look at the people who are
Okay, but
politically ineffective. Look at those people. But I think that if people from within the DNC, people like I think if people like me were making this argument, and people like you started making this argument, and people like you know, uh, dare I mention him, Bosch. I think if some people that care about this shit and who have voted for the DNC in the past started making this argument to other people who have voted for the DNC in the past, I think that we would actually have a really significant chance at doing this if we, at the same time, were engaging with politically unengaged people and yeah, would that be hard? Yeah, but nothing worth having is easy, as my dad used to say, and
But
it's one of those things that I think it's possible. I don't think is it the most likely fucking thing? No, I think the most likely thing is that the fucking two-party duopoly rules America until this world burns down to the last man. Um, but I think it would certainly be preferable, and I think that that's something that we could start advocating for. Here's the big difference, right? Here's
hold
what
on, yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
well, I just feel like
I keep wanting to jump in, but
I know.
I'll keep going. Yeah, you're fine.
Here's my big thing. I feel like
Yeah,
ranked choice voting is not something that I don't know that we can convince the Democratic Party to get rid of it. I think that they have too much of an advantage
to
to be
implement
gained
it.
from things being the same way. Do what?
Hmm. To implement it, you mean?
Right. I just don't. Yeah, exactly. I don't know
Yeah.
that we could convince Democrats to actually implement it. So I, I'm down for us trying. Mind you, I am totally down for us pressuring the Democratic Party in whatever ways are available to us. Which, by the way, I do believe counts. Like not voting is one of those ways. But point is, I think if we can convince the DNC to adopt ranked choice voting as a position, then by all means, let's do it. But I also think that we could simultaneously be saying, um, and whatever, maybe it's Machiavellian, maybe we'd be speaking out of both sides of our mouth, but I think at the same time, you could make the argument for people to really just drop out and vote third party if they are eligible to vote. And I think that it's something we can
Okay.
work on right now, so to speak.
Well, here's another layer though to that, right? Like you're so not only do I guess what your what that strategy relies on to work out is something that's never happened before, which is that everyone has to vote their interest, right?
Not everyone.
Like everyone has to. Well, a lot of people.
60% of
So like,
people.
let's look at. Okay, hold on. Let's look at the 2020 primary. Okay. Or I'm sorry, the 2020 primary. Um, Bernie was going really strong, right? He had won the caucus in Iowa, he had won New Hampshire, he had won Nevada, and then it comes to South Carolina, and Biden sweeps it, right?
Right.
Why did the people in South Carolina vote for Biden when they could have voted for Bernie, who would have represented them better and done more to advance their interests?
I don't
What's
know.
the
How much
reason that
the
they voted for Biden?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I would if I had to guess, I would say it probably has something to do with the amount of campaign funds spent in North Carolina or South Carolina rather.
Do you think that do you think like the average American is really well informed about these things? Like, do you think that
No, I think that's
the
part of the
average
reason why we're in
American?
the position we're in.
Okay, so in order for your Green Party idea to work out, we have to combat that mass ignorance, right? That has to happen before we can do anything. And that is a battle we've been fighting for hundreds of years. And the thing is, we don't have to win that battle in order to get what you want if we do it a different way, if we do it through ranked choice voting. Your way is unnecessarily difficult. It's not a good way to accomplish what you want to accomplish. You said like, well, sometimes things are worth fighting for that are hard, and I agree. Difficult things are definitely worth it oftentimes, but to do something needlessly difficult, like if we're trying to climb a mountain and we have two paths available to us and we choose the more difficult path, the more perilous path, when we could just as well take the less perilous path that's that we have a better chance of surviving
I
taking.
guess
And by the that would be my criticism.
my problem would be I don't see the less perilous path being visible. Like I've never heard a Democrat advocating openly for ranked choice voting. I mean, maybe Bernie has. I don't actually remember, but
It
it's
was a big Andrew Yang thing too.
oh, dude, I
Randomly.
loved Andrew Yang until he came out against porn, bro. I was
Uh,
Yang gang
no, I
until he
saw
came out
through that
against
shit.
porn.
I saw I saw through that shit, dude. Before the primaries were over, I knew his deal. He was just a like a centrist business dude.
Well, I was still
I
down.
don't
I
know.
was down for a central. I was down
You
for.
were in the
Dude,
Yang Gang.
listen, I was in the Yang Gang, and I tell you what. Here's why. Because Joe Biden is a centrist businessman. He's just not a centrist
Yeah,
businessman with a UBI. If Joe Biden was a centrist
true.
businessman with a UBI as part of his platform, you think I'd be on here talking about what a horrible, decrepit old fucking corpse he was? No, I'd be fucking
Well,
bullshitting and coping
I
about
would
how
hope
he's the best
so.
president
But
we ever had. No, hell no.
oh,
You think
so
if I
what?
was sitting pretty with a universal basic income that increased my family's ability to make it in this fucking country, that I, like, if he had done something that sweeping and massive for the American people, you really think I would be sitting around talking about how he's like one of the least effective Democratic politicians ever? How could I at that point? How could I?
So
That's not to say I wouldn't point out the bad things that he did as part of his presidency, but how could I
uh-huh.
go as hard against Biden as I do if he had done something as sweeping as that? Right?
So would you have voted for Biden if everything was the same except for he had a UBI?
I voted for Biden anyway.
Forget that. Just whatever.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, well, yeah, I thought I
Damn
told
it,
you
Phoebe.
earlier I voted for
Like,
Biden, so
no, you maybe you did, and I'm a little stoned, so who
no, you're
knows? But
fine. I'm pretty
uh,
stoned too. It's okay.
let's pretend like you're voting today for Biden, right? From the mindset you have now, or fuck you, let's say Harris, right? Everything about Harris was the same, but she also had a UBI program. Would you vote for her?
I mean, well, hell, since this is just a hypothetical, hell yeah, probably.
Okay. I mean, it's a hypothetical, but you have just made a fantastic argument for lesser evil voting.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's. I mean, it's a
like,
pointless.
like, look,
Here's the thing, though. It's a pointless point because fucking that wasn't
it's
on
not a
her.
pointless
But that
it's not
wasn't
a
on her
pointless
fucking
argument because it
platform.
it illustrates it illustrates that these lesser evil voting this matters, right?
It
And that
does matter,
there
but
is something.
it's a matter of degrees, my
Yeah.
friend. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it's like if the world. Okay, so here's my thing, right? If let's do a little
Yeah.
math here. If the world is shitty,
Sure.
and you give me one option that makes it 2% shittier, but doesn't make it any percent better, or only makes it like 2% better, but also makes it 2% shittier, and then you give me another option
Mm-hmm.
that's going to make it 0% better and 4% shittier, so twice the shittier, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really look at either one of those as a really good choice. One is just spinning us
Well,
around
one's a
like a
better
couple of
choice.
Haitian refugees that don't know how to row a boat, and the other is putting a hole in the boat. But neither of us is getting us to shore. You know?
Okay. Forget about good and bad. What's better and worse?
What's better? Like, are you asking like the literal
Yeah,
definitions
which
of
of
the
the
term?
look, is 2% evil or 4% evil? Which of those is worse?
Which of those is worse?
Is
Um,
it better to make the world 2% more evil or 4% more evil?
I don't
And I
know.
think we're talking in,
I
you
think
know,
it
you're
depends.
being
I think it depends,
you're
man.
being hyper you're being hyper like absurdly nuanced with the differences here, and I'm just indulging you. I mean, obviously the difference between the Dems and Republicans is much more than 2%, but like I'm just saying
Probably.
like forget good and bad, do better or worse, right? And voting for the Democrats, we're doing that so we can set ourselves up for greater victory down the road, right? Like with ranked choice voting or whatever the issue is with getting more people healthcare with stronger, robust unions and more access to labor rights, right? Like whatever it is, where these are all things that we're trying to accomplish over time. But voting for the Democrats brings us closer to these. But if it's even just 2% versus 4%, you're going to vote for 2% less, not 4% like less, right? Like you want to do less harm if that's the only choice you have, and there's a million other factors, but if it's just between those two choices, the death of one is a tragedy and the death of a million is a statistic, but those 2% of people who are going to be, who are going to have their lives ruined or whatever, the 2% extra people, those are all individuals like you or I, right? Or your mom with healthcare or whatever. Those are all people that matter, whose rights are important, and if I can save them, even though I'm not saving everyone and I'm not doing what I really want to do, those two they're worth putting my name on a piece of paper and dropping it in a box. It's such a minimal thing. Like, they're worth it. It's worth sucking up to the lesser evil in this scenario.
But what if that participation encourages the lesser evil to not shift towards the good position?
Look, sometimes when you vote for Democrats, they do good things, right? Like FDR. And sometimes when you vote for Democrats, they do bad things, like the genocide, right? Or whatever it is. So we don't know. Sometimes when we vote for them, good things happen. And sometimes when we vote for them, bad things happen, right? So voting for them alone is not a good indicator of whether things will get better or worse. It depends on so many things. It depends on the individual candidate. It depends on the cabinet of the candidate, who they appoint. Like, who cares what Biden thinks about labor if he appoints Lena Khan to head the FTC, or who cares about like what he personally says or does if the people he puts in charge of it are making good changes, right? Like, who cares about whether Obama cares about helping the poor if he appoints Elizabeth Warren to the Consumer Financial Protection Board? Like, these are important substantive things that matter, right?
I'm gonna go wash this and fill this.
I think that they're important and at least somewhat substantive. I think the world's probably better because America at the very least is better because it had those things and not whatever Republican bullshit would have come in its place. But like
okay. Sorry, let me just say this one more, and then I'll let you go, because I know I'm like totally, I'm just filibustering maybe, but
a little bit.
That 3%, the 8% to 11% that increased in healthcare under Biden, okay, that choice that we could make by sucking it up and voting for Biden or whoever, right? That choice that we can make, we can actually affect. And there's a good chance that if we vote for them, those 3% of people are going to be saved or get access to healthcare. But if we don't vote for them, the chances of, our third party rising up or whatever are way less likely. And so what you're advocating for is to not do the lesser evil vote because you feel like it's going to make things worse in the long run. But again, to that, I would say that's just not backed up for evidence, because we have examples of it both making things worse, but also making things better. And it's actually more than just that factor. There are several factors other than just lesser evil voting that determines the direction that the Democrats are going to move in. But even if it's just, I'm going to suck it up and vote for the lesser evil so that 3% more people can get healthcare, versus I'm going to take a gamble and make a principled stand against voting and try to get the Green Party elected on an off chance that could happen. Like that's so absurd to me. That's like, I'm not going to pay for this prescription I need because who knows, maybe I'll win the lottery tonight and then I can buy all the prescriptions I want, right? It's kind of like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, it seems so like such an irrational gamble that doesn't just affect you, it affects the country and everyone in it. But those 3% people or whatever, or think about all the federal employees now who have been fired just based on that one decision of who's president. I don't know. I just genuinely want people to grapple with the reality of the system we're living in and to think intelligently about the ways that we need to really control the battlefield more than fight the actual battle we're fighting. We need to change the conditions of the map we're on.
I think we've been trying
the way
to do
that you're advocating for is, yeah, but the way that you're advocating for is not doing that. And it's not going to lead to that. And it's never once in the history of the world led to that. There's no example you can point to in history of this strategy working out, right? Whereas I can point to several examples.
What strategy?
The example of abandoning the Democratic Party and a third party rising up, of everyone having, what I'm saying is that there's no example of enough people in America making the decision to join a third party to have that take over and sweep the two current parties out of power, or to check their power significantly. That's never happened in the history of our country.
Never?
But Democrats
There's never been a third party?
I don't think so. Well, I mean...
What about the Bull Moose Party?
Not late. There's... Well, sure, maybe hundreds of years ago. That's not what I'm saying,
Hundreds of years ago? That was 100 years ago.
Which party was it you were saying?
The Bull Moose Party. Teddy
what
Roosevelt's
did they
party.
do?
That was Teddy Roosevelt's
He was a
party.
Republican, though.
And so, Republican meant a different thing then.
Right, but I'm saying that wasn't a third party. That was like a caucus within the Republican Party, right?
I believe what
Or am
happened
I
was
just
that
not?
it
Am
was a
I?
third party.
I mean, I'm
and
ignorant.
I think it
W-
was a third party, but he ended up joining the Republicans for his second re-election campaign. I believe. I might be wrong on that.
I'm
Or
gonna
maybe it
fact
was
check
his
you real
first
quick
election
to make
campaign
sure.
that he was a bull moose, and then his second. I don't fucking pretend to know, but I just know
Like,
the bull
like
moose
I know
party
they had
won
like.
an election back in the 19 teens. You know.
So I know they had like the whips and like the Republican Democrats and like the Federalists and Anti-Federalists like way back in the day, but that was before the duopoly was established. But since the early 1800s, we haven't had that. I'm looking at his. Let's see. I'm trying to see his first administration. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was a Republican. It looks like, and I mean the party switched, but he was a Republican, and that was during the era of the two-party duopoly. I'm just reading now. I'm trying to find the. You said it was the Bull Moose Party.
Yeah, the bull moose party. So it was, so the Progressive Party, popularly nicknamed the Bull Moose Party, was the third party in the United States, formed in 1912 by former President Teddy Roosevelt after he lost the presidential nomination of the Republican Party to his former protege turned rival, incumbent President William Taft. The new party was known for taking advanced positions on progressive reforms and attracting leading national reformers. The party was also ideologically deeply connected with America's radical liberal tradition. After the party's defeat in the 1912 United States presidential election, it went into rapid decline in elections until 1918, disappearing for 1920. So I guess I was wrong, and they never did win.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, and whatever. I mean, I'm happy that you brought that up because I learned a little bit, but I'm
Yeah,
saying
so did
like
I.
this is not an example we can use.
No.
So your
No, I
example
agree now.
is not valid in this argument.
I thought that
So-
Teddy Roosevelt had won under the Bull Mooses. I was wrong.
Yeah, nah, it's cool. But what I'm saying though is that so you acknowledge that there is no example since the early 1800s when the two-party duopoly really took effect.
No, but there's
and
also
and
no,
just
there's also no example of the Democratic Party ever adopting ranked choice voting or there ever being a successful
No, but
attempt
there
to
is-
push that nationally.
hold on. There are examples though of them doing the New Deal, of them doing the Civil Rights Act, right? Like we do have, and those are still long lasting. There is union reform that was passed through the Democrats. The reason there is even a minimum wage at all is because of labor gains under Democratic administrations. The reason that there's a 40-hour work week and shit like that, and these are all gains that were made under Democratic administrations. Or even if fuck that, even Republican administrations, right? Like we do maybe way back in the day, Roosevelt, when the Republicans were progressives, an antitrust party, they made positive changes, but that was through Roosevelt co-opting the Republican Party, right, and bending it to his purpose. And you can say like he's probably one of the better Republican presidents, right? Especially with how he handled the moneyed interests at the time.
Well, you'd have to,
But
you'd
FDR
have to
also,
say so, right?
the other Roosevelt too, he was elected as a Democrat and he bent the Democratic Party to his will. And so we do have examples of actual progressives getting positions of authority in both parties and bringing those parties more into what we would want, more in line with our beliefs. We have examples. We have dozens of historical examples of that, and we have no historical examples of what you're advocating for working.
I mean, I think it's I think it's incredibly interesting that you would bring up examples of overall progressive policies passing in the wake of Democratic victories in the presidency, but I mean we're talking about a specific policy, right? I mean, with me, I'm talking about a very specific strategy, right? I'm talking about a very specific strategy of trying to win over the massive block of unengaged but eligible voters and engage enough of the currently Democratic voters in order to help a third party, whether that be the Green Party or a new party of some kind, rise up, right? That's a very specific
Wouldn't
thing.
you say?
And ranked choice
Hold on.
voting, which is what you postulated as an alternative to what I am suggesting, is also a very specific policy. And we don't have any examples of that being implemented in
Right.
America or being pushed for by the Democratic Party. So my question to you at this point is, what
Hmm.
is your what is your plan for getting the Democratic Party to change the system that allows them to have a duopoly with the Republican Party? What's your plan? I just want to hear it.
Okay, that's a good question, and I don't have one, right? So that's fine.
Well, how are
That's
you
not
any
something that
better
I've
off than
tried.
I am then?
Hold on, hold on. No, because I feel like you're missing the point I'm making. It's not that ranked choice voting specifically is going to work, right? It's that the way that we accomplish the changes we want in the country, the way that I'm advocating for historically is how we do that. Forget about what the specific change is. It's about getting your government to represent what the people want. Now, that could be ranked choice voting, that could be universal healthcare, that could be whatever issue. We're more likely to get that by doing what I'm advocating for, and we have more historical examples of that working. Now, with ranked choice voting specifically, I feel like that's kind of a new thing. At least it is for me. Um, I've been following politics since I was like 10, since like the Bush years, right? Like, I mean, this is,
Same.
and it wasn't until Yang really that ranked choice voting was a huge movement. And before that, it was just kind of a lefty progressive pipe dream that we had that was in very niche circles talked about. So this is something that we can bring into the public consciousness. And I think it makes way more sense to think that we could bring ranked choice voting, a ranked choice voting movement into the public conscious and get momentum behind that and get that into the Democratic Party than to do a whole other party with
Why is that
you
more
know,
likely though? What makes that more likely in
because
your
that's a
mind?
specific policy that can be accomplished through the Democratic
It
Party.
can be, but the Democrats have never fucking adopted it. They've never implied that that's their position or implied that they want to pursue
Right.
that as
Well,
a goal.
like I said, because we haven't pushed for that in a populist way. There hasn't
Right.
been a huge populist movement for that. But but if we look at like the labor movement, for example, we could do something similar. We just have to look at historical examples of how like the labor movement in the 30s, 40s, or how the civil rights movements in the 60s, how they
Mm-hmm.
accomplished the things they accomplished, right? Like who the fuck, like think about if in 1950, if I said, oh, fucking the best way to get gay marriage, right? Like if that's the goal, like no one's even talking about that in the 1950s, right? No one's even thinking that's what we're going to do. Like, but if I said like let's start a third party and do that versus let's work within the system we have, which is ultimately what happened. Do you see what I'm saying? Like these things do happen. There can be momentum behind them. That's the way we accomplish things. If you want to use populist momentum and the will of the people to get what you want done, you can do that easier through the party that exists now than by abandoning that party, forming a new party, which by the way, you have to get them to change the rules to even make the Green Party viable. I don't know if you followed the Stein campaign this time around, but it was roadblock after roadblock after roadblock because the way that they have the duopoly reinforced is unfair and does push out third parties. So they already have to change that. We already have to get them to change the rules to even have a third party be viable. So there's that aspect of it. Then we have to get everyone, or at least enough people, to agree at exactly the same time during the same election cycle that they want to vote Green Party. So there's so many more things that go into that, and so much more orchestration, and so much more at risk to do things that way than if we just try to get the Democratic Party to adopt a ranked choice voting platform by pressuring them. The same way that historically we've pressured them to make the changes we want them to make. Do you see what so I'm not
I do see what you're
I'm not
saying, but
there's
as a person, so when you remember me telling you earlier about how I participated in the legalization of recreational cannabis in Missouri?
mm-hmm.
Well, there was another piece of legislation that I was trying to help get pushed forward in Missouri. It was ranked choice voting. And you know what
Yeah.
wall I kept running up against and trying to convince people to sign that petition?
Hmm.
The stupidity of the average American voter. Because
Yeah, well,
I used the
just
exact...
hard doesn't mean it's not worth doing, man.
Well, yeah, I agree.
That's what I would say to you.
But I, like, whatever, call it, maybe I have a lack of faith, but when I look at these two possibilities for these two different directions we could go, I think that I can more easily convince the average American voter, regardless of their level of intelligence or their level of political awareness, to vote for a third party. I think I can sooner convince them to protest for that, to organize for that, to rabble rouse for that, and most importantly of all, to withhold their votes for that. I think I can make that argument a hell of a lot easier and make it translate into people's lives and shit a whole lot easier than I can the argument of ranked choice voting. My evidence for that is the total fucking lack of reception that I found when trying to get people to sign up for that petition. And it wasn't because I wasn't pushing it. It's just because people cannot, like, people in America, I don't even think it's stupidity. I think it's basically brainwashing. It's that we've been conditioned into this system for so fucking long that I don't even think people know about how to conceive of another way. And, like, when it comes to the finer details of how our elections work, there's just a lot of people. I'm sorry, I'll shut up after this, but there's just a lot of people.
Well, no, I want to just ask you a couple questions about what you're saying. I don't want you to shut up. I just want you to clarify a couple things.
Well, let me just to finish off this last point. Well, actually, I forgot.
Sure.
Go ahead and ask your questions.
Sorry. I'm just saying, why do you think you were successful with weed but not successful with ranked choice voting?
Because that's actually what I was about to say. Thank you for reminding me. Because I think that it is incredibly easy for people to be passionate about and politically active on issues that can be explained relatively simply and whose effects might be explained relatively simply. And it is much harder to get people to engage politically on economics or political reform.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I agree with what you said so basically ranked choice voting is more of an abstraction and they don't see how that directly affects them, where most of them probably smoke weed, right? So they understand that their liberal rights are very much affected by that, where they can't see how their liberal rights are affected by ranked choice voting.
Precisely.
I think that's okay. Now look what's happening. Have you been watching these town halls where Republicans in red districts are getting shouted down by their constituents? Have you been watching any of that footage?
No.
That's been going on?
No, I can tell just from this conversation that you watch and pay attention to a hell of a lot more news than I do. I try to,
yeah, especially now.
Like, I try to stay informed, but I'm one of those people that's like emotionally affected by news pretty easily, and so I
well, you're gonna want to see this. This is hopium in these dark days for sure, because you're seeing red voters in red districts wake up and realize, like, what's going on and how they're being fucked over by these Republican representatives. They're, because it's affecting them, because it's no longer an abstraction, because cutting Social Security, cutting Medicaid is now real and it now affects their lives. They're waking up and they're realizing it. And there's mobilization against that. And so this can solve the problem, right? If we find a way to make them realize these issues, ranked choice voting affects them, right? And I think ranked choice voting is kind of a tall order to do all at once. But I do think it could be a popular idea if it's explained correctly under the right conditions. And I do think that can be part of a democratic platform, hopefully sooner rather than later. But in the future, I think that it can be accomplished when people realize that how much it affects them or how much it could change their lives for the better if it was accomplished. But as Trump is doing all these horrible things, these people are waking up and they're realizing this affects me. I'm the one on the slaughtering block, right? And
it's about
that's sort of
time.
Right, exactly. But what I'm saying is that if your weed example, right? That affects people. That's why they were passionate about it. That's why you were able to mobilize them. These issues, if we can convince them that it affects them, that's, we have to. The truth is that this is so hard because it has to do with individual people changing their minds. We can't say, and this is another reason I think it's silly to think like everyone is going to have this massive class consciousness awakening and all vote for the Green Party candidate, because people are dumb, like you pointed out, and they're complicated, and different things cause different people to change their minds. Some people are persuaded by logic, some people are persuaded by emotion, whatever it is.
True.
But if it affects them, they will be persuaded more often than not. I
would
think
agree with that.
if they're conscious of how it affects them, right? Now, obviously, all these things affect them, and they have always affected them, but it's so far removed that it's abstract for them. They don't understand the immediate implications it has on their life, like they do, for example, when Roe v. Wade is overturned, right? There's a big shitstorm over that because everyone suddenly realizes, like, oh, this affects me personally. It's fucked up that it's happening, and that's how we awaken people. We find a way to make them realize this is what's going on. But when they're awakened, we funnel that energy into the best, most likely thing that we can accomplish, which is getting Republicans out of power. Because when we're under Democrats, we are able to make incremental good changes. And again, I'll point out the CFPB, the NLRB, the FTC, all under Democratic administrations, the gains that we're able to make under that, the ACA improvements over that, how that incrementally improves, and how millions of people since the ACA was passed get added into it every time a Democrat is elected president, and every time a Republican is, they lose access. So there is a roadmap here, and there are actual arguments you can make, and there are things you can do to make people realize, you know, what the actions that need to be taken.
I definitely agree there.
So with strategy, though, this is because we can agree and we can both be completely successful in what we're trying to do. But if on election day you still go and a sizable people still defect from the DNC, we're never going to overcome them. We're not going to beat the RNC. We need solidarity.
Yeah. I mean, I just
look, fuck the DNC and fuck the Green Party. Fuck political parties. Solidarity among the people of this country. The working class people, the labor people, the liberals, right, of this country, people who want liberal rights and freedoms for everyone, equity under the law. That's our party.
I mean,
and
I agree,
I don't
but
care
how do you foster that?
I don't care.
I just don't. I don't think. I mean, whatever. I know you've made the arguments as to why you find it important to argue for Democrats, but I don't see how it fosters solidarity amongst the working class people of America to, you know, to shame people for their non-voting habits, or to imply that a principled vote for third party is functionally the same as a vote for Trump, and that a vote for Trump is like the worst thing you can do. I just don't know that sort of rhetoric leads to a whole lot of you know, solidarity.
You're right. It's combative. And when I come at you or Paul or whoever super strong, right? Like that part of that is just for the entertainment value of being able to take these arguments and tear them apart, right?
Of course.
And these arguments, those are all true criticisms. So all the criticisms I've made about your position in that one video from your post, or about Paul, those are genuine criticisms I have. And the reason I'm coming on so strong is not necessarily to change your mind, but to make the case for the public people who are watching that, right? Like as few as they may be, the few dozen people who see that dialogue and who understand that, I want to know that my position is that people are understanding it, and that more people are starting to agree with it. And you know, that's part of the presentation, is coming at you super strong like that. But you know, if I'm actually trying to change your mind, or I actually want you to consider something, or if I'm actually trying to get you to see the flaw in your thinking, or what I perceive to be the flaw in your thinking, or the self-destructive activism, or whatever it is, then I'm going to talk to you like this, right? It's going to be a one-on-one thing where I kind of go in depth and I get super specific and I point out, you know, the reasons why I think this or that or whatever. Like, I'm not trying to change your mind when I made that video. That's more of a spectacle for other people. But I am happy that you reached out to me, and I am happy we get to have this conversation. But this is where I'm not even trying to be a diplomat, and you know, I try to treat everyone with respect, but I'm not trying to give deference to you or anything. I want you to engage logically with the points I'm making, to engage with the reality of what I'm saying, engage with that. You know, I'm right that historically this is the best way to make positive change, and your way has never been accomplished. Like, that's the thing that I want you to engage with, and I want you to genuinely think about that. I know you're not gonna be like, oh fuck, you're right, I'm wrong, instantly. But I want you to have that internal dialogue with yourself, because next time this happens in 2028 or in the midterms in 2026, I want you voting DNC. I want you to vote the fascists who are in there now out of power and put the soft fascists in power again. Yeah. But from there, we'll make better changes and we'll try to get ranked choice voting and everything. But right now, we just need to undo what's happening. And you need to be a part of that. And your advocacy, those thousands of people who watch your stream, need to hear that message and need to be a part of that and need to critically think about what they do and how their voting does impact things and how actually, and I know we minimize that voting for Trump isn't the worst thing ever, but it really is like voting for a fascist. And I don't mean like a soft fascist in the way that America is fascist in some aspects or the way that Joe Biden was fascist in some ways. I mean an outright authoritarian nationalist like Donald Trump. That's what I mean. And destroying that is far more important than risking everything on this Green Party pipe dream that's never happened before in history.
Yeah, I think if the vote blue, no matter who argument was going to work, it should have worked in 2024, right? I mean, we've already had Trump once. The thing is, Trump won with way better margins in 2024 than he did in 2020. Now, less people participated in the election overall.
They weren't way better. Huh? They weren't way better margins.
I mean, let's see.
They were slightly better. He made slight gains, right, in certain minority groups, but they weren't way better.
And let's see.
And even if he did, and I want you to read whatever you're going to read. I think it's important that we do fact check ourselves and we go through the statistics. But even if he did, what is that? That doesn't mean anything. Sorry, you've already said that people vote against their interests all the time and that people, aren't always intelligent when they vote. We both agree with that. So even if more people did vote for Trump this time, that would just mean that more people are more incorrect than they were last time. Not that, so that it doesn't really matter how many more people, even if we're losing, even if our arguments are losing, that doesn't mean that they're not correct. And it doesn't mean that because Trump is making these small gains that he's making on these very niche groups, that doesn't mean that that trend is going to continue, because like you said, this was mostly a vote on the economy.
Yeah. So just to clarify, it's not like the biggest margin ever, but in 2024, Trump won with 312 electoral votes. Harris lost with 226. And in 2016, Clinton lost with 227, and Trump won with 304. So Trump gained a total of 8 points, and the Democratic Party lost 1.
Which is but that's just the Electoral College, and that's very small, right? That's a very small difference. But look at the popular vote. The popular vote is even slimmer margins. It's like 1.5% more or something. There was like 1.5%, 1.5 points more that Trump got than Harris. It's very small numbers.
Trump lost the popular vote in 2016, so.
Yeah, right. And in if you look at his numbers in 2020 versus 2024, they're not that different, right? I think it's only like maybe 2 or 3 more million people voted for him. Like 1% of the country more voted for him this time around than last time around. The big difference are like the 6 million people or whatever who didn't turn up for the Democrats this time around, who did last time, right?
Wait, you just said the 16 people who didn't turn up for the Democrats?
The 6 million. 6 million.
I thought you said 16.
That's the big change.
I was like, oh man, that's being a little hyperbolic. Yeah.
No, the big change was for the Democrats losing voters, not for Trump gaining voters.
I mean, if you look at I don't know. I would have to look at the popular vote statistics. Looking at the Electoral College, it paints a different picture, but like you said, I'm sure the popular vote statistics also paint a different picture.
Well, the Electoral College, it doesn't paint that big of a picture, right? The Democrats only lost 1 college vote, and the Democrats only gained 8 college votes. That's only like 2 states.
The Republicans, you mean?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but still, the Democrats... I mean, I'm just saying that the picture it paints is that the Democrats lost less people than Trump gained, if that makes sense.
Right. But people don't. Yeah, but people don't realize how this affects them that they do now, right? Like all these town halls, all
Some
this
of them
going on,
do.
and I do recommend.
I
Well,
will
they're
check it
waking up,
out.
but
I will check it out.
just don't. You don't even have to do it on stream, just for your own fucking mental health. Like it is really nice to see. There is a euphoria of seeing this uprising finally starting to happen, even if it is in a nascent stage. But you know, people now realize the terrible mistake they've made. I think there is instant buyer's remorse for Trump, including among Republicans, not even disaffected lefties or whatever, or independents who decided to gamble on Trump.
I mean, I read a news story about this earlier today or yesterday or something. I don't know. This leg injury has made my fucking time become meaningless in my mind. But,
He's okay.
but I was reading a news story about how there are a bunch of like MAGA people who were formerly employed by the federal government who are now facing layoffs, or they're under investigations, or their funding is in question and shit like that. And so it's kind of like it's a leopards ate your face story for sure. But I don't know. Sometimes if I'm in a really bad and misanthropic mood, I can take some heart in those stories. But usually that sort of thing is just a human tragedy story in my mind. That sort of thing is just another example of how the political class in this country fucks things over for people like me and you. Even if those people voted for Trump, I don't wish for them to have worse lives, you know? I don't know.
I mean, even look, you can acknowledge the poetic justice or the irony
poetic justice is a different
of
aspect,
someone,
for sure.
Someone fucking themselves over with that. But keep in mind that doesn't just fuck like the leopards aren't just eating their faces, they're eating all our faces, right? like the leopards are eating their faces, but everyone else is also getting eaten by the leopards. So yeah, they made a dumb decision and they're suffering for it, but also we're all suffering for it.
I guess it is a bit like it's a bit like, you know, you ever heard of Ernest Röhm?
No.
The gay Nazi?
No.
No. Okay, well, a little
Sounds like
lesson.
I should hear about it, though. So,
yes.
Let's hear it.
Ernst Röhm was a known homosexual in Germany, and he was the leader of the Sturmabteilung, the SA, so the paramilitary branch of the Nazi Party. And he was allowed to remain in power despite his it was kind of like an open secret in Berlin that he was a homosexual, and he was allowed to remain in his position and remain politically relevant right up until the moment that the Nazis started doing concentration camps, and right up until the moment that Hitler got some whiff of some plot that Ernst might have been involved in, and at that point he was told there are no gay Nazis and was executed. So it's like it's that's a very similar kind of leopards ate your face story where old Ernest thought he was really gonna be able to ride to power despite his proclivities, and then he got his face ate. But I guess the joke I was making is that it would be a little bit like somebody in the Nazi concentration camps laughing at Ernest getting executed. It's like, yeah, well, exactly. The leopards are eating everybody's faces, so not exactly something to cheer about.
It's a bitter little victory that
exactly
that asshole is also getting his comeuppance, definitely. Phoebe, I'm probably gonna have to jump off here pretty soon.
Too.
I have to get up tomorrow
a
little bit early. But if there's anything else you wanted to talk about, I can maybe do another 10 minutes or so. If you had anything else you wanted to ask me or to criticize me for, or if there was, whatever.
No, I mean, like I said, I think, ultimately all of these debates kind of run up against the same wall, which is that one person, like one of us, believes that we can, like one of us has a lot more faith in America's institutions and like, whatever. Maybe I've got a pretty dreamy
I don't know.
view of
I'm
how things
confused.
could
I'm
work.
kind of confused about which one of us feels that way, because I feel like you have this faith in our institutions to withstand fascism, and I have faith in our institutions to, if they're properly used, to help us defeat fascism. So
Well,
I
I do
think we
too,
both have faith
but
in our institutions, just in different ways.
well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even say in different ways. I mean, I have that faith in our institutions too. I just don't. Like this is the wall we're running up against. I don't think that can come from the Democratic Party in its current state. There is a hypothetical future in which I vote for the Democratic Party where they've got an open and transparent primary whose processes are clearly visible, where a socialist rises up through that process, which, by the way, I mean, we both know you were a Bernie bro in 2016, and I'm sure you, we talked about Bloody Tuesday earlier, so I know you are familiar with the two Bernie campaigns, so it's like, if the
Well, yeah, but
DNC
he's
had
not a
allowed,
socialist, though, right?
I mean, he describes himself as one. Is he? I don't know.
Well, as a
Um,
he he
I
describes
guess as
himself as a democratic socialist, but I would say he's more of a social democrat. He's not. I
I
don't.
mean,
That's just. I don't get a read on him that he's a socialist, but I don't think anything he's advocated for is really socialist.
I guess it
You know,
depends on your
hard-nosed
definition of
leftist beliefs.
socialist. I mean,
Yeah.
like socialist, as far as I know, the textbook definition of socialist is someone who believes in personal property but not private property, and um, I think a distinction is
Thought
made
it was
between
from
do what?
each according to his. Isn't it from each according to his ability to each according to his need?
I always thought that was the
Socialism,
communist
Senator
maxim,
Marx.
but I always thought that was a
Well,
communist
Marx was a
maxim, but
socialist, right? Like that. Well, they come out of the same tradition. They both come from Marxism. That was a
right.
Marxist.
I mean,
So
Marx described himself as a communist, but I don't know. I guess the distinction doesn't matter all that much, but my understanding was that the distinction between communism and socialism or lays somewhere in um, their definition of property and their um, overall goals.
it's my understanding that socialism is an economic system and communism is a government system. So like, um, you could be you could be a left socialist or a right socialist, a conservative socialist, an authoritarian socialist. Uh, Socialism is the economic policy, but communism is more of like the not just the economy, but the government overall kind of. That would be that.
Yeah,
That's
that
how
might
I
be a more
understand it.
accurate way of describing it. But yeah, just to finish off and finalize, you know, well, actually, there is one thing that I wanted to comment on. That can be the finalization comment. So, you had said something about
Sure.
how, you. I'll summarize it like this. You basically said that you hoped that you planted a seed with me here tonight. And I just thought it was kind of beautiful because I hope the exact same thing for you. I mean, I genuinely believe that voting for the Democratic Party at this point is just telling the DNC that it doesn't matter what they do, doesn't matter how right-wing their policy is, doesn't really matter if they go back on their promises, that we're going to be there for them no matter what. And I would love to see people like you who have a passion for making these arguments and who are well-spoken and don't trip up over the words. I mean, you've done even less of that this stream than I have. I mean, and like, so I think that if people on the left that were capable of making these positions, if there were more of us out there, I feel like that what you described as, basically like winning the lottery earlier, I think that it becomes less like the chances of winning the lottery and more like the chances of finding a persimmon on a walk through the woods in the South. So about 50-50. I think that if enough people, I don't see how that couldn't be true. If enough people start making these arguments, and it's like you brought the civil rights movement and the massive work that happened under the labor movement to get workers' rights installed in this country, and all of those movements fundamentally start out the same way. People that are passionate about the arguments arguing with other people, and those 2 people become 4 people, those 4 people become 8 people, those 8 people become 16 people, and then there's 16 people fighting for a better world. On and on until you've got 20% or 25% of this unengaged but eligible electorate and 50% of the DNC, and then both the current two parties are fucking irrelevant, at least until people get pissed off with whatever the third party is, and then maybe one of them will be relevant again, but at least we would get a chance at some progressive policy. And I don't think I'm as starry-eyed a dreamer as some people make me out to be when it comes to that goal. I think that it's about as easy as making the arguments and getting people to acknowledge them. So I don't know that I've managed to make any significant progress on that front. I know that this has been an edifying conversation and an interesting conversation, and that's worth something in my book, even if neither of our minds are changed.
You know, see, even there, I'm picking up on like 100 things I want to argue with you about, but I'm gonna
Well,
I'll
maybe
say,
we can
like,
do
I
this
think
another time.
we can definitely do this another time. I'm happy to have additional conversations with you. Maybe we can even not maybe come to terms on this specific thing, but come to other things we can agree on in ways to work together to move the country in a direction we
Yeah,
want.
that would actually be a really
Outside of
fun direction
electoralism,
to go.
maybe.
Yeah.
But I do still want to continue to have this dialogue on electoralism with you in the future. You know, we'll keep arguing about it maybe going forward. But thank you for having me on, and you have a good one.
Definitely. Thank you for coming on, and I appreciate the conversation. And like you said, I hope I get to have you on again eventually sometime soon, you know?
Yeah, right on. Just you have me on Discord, so just hit me up.
All
We'll
right.
try to work something out.
For sure, for sure.
All right, take care.
You too. Thank you so much. All right. So that was that. That was our little debate with AlchemistSoil. And yeah, I don't guess I have that much more to say. So yeah, that was pretty fun. I guess I'll read through the chat a little bit before I go and then head out of here. Nice convo, y'all. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Glitch Dash, what's up? What's up? What's up? Inner City Pigeon, what's up? Been seeing a lot of people are happy. I mean, I think a lot of people. I think what happens in politics is that every time we have an election, whoever agrees with or whoever voted for or agrees more with the politician that wins, I feel like those people just kind of go around acting like everything's hunky-dory now. I feel like that's something you can pretty much predict about any election. It's just such a regular feature of our electoral tendencies. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for participating in the stream and in the chat. Sorry I wasn't able to watch the chat much, but that was a pretty engaging conversation. And no bathroom breaks were needed, so I didn't have a chance to do it. So anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later.